Yeah, I guess I'm probably the special guest because I see the guy who invited us, who invited me, so...
That's so cool. He was like, I got a special guest. I've been excited about it. I'm stoked it's you, man. It's cool to finally talk with you.
Yeah, I like your videos a lot.
I appreciate that. I've always liked your content a lot. I can't use that word. That's not a good descriptor, but that we were able to connect on this new account and, kind of share information has been awesome, man. It's you are a very important voice right now, and it's a privilege to know you and work beside you.
Okay, I'll accept that. I mean, a very important voice. I never thought of myself that way, but I like to come on TikTok and, piss people off and share my views. So that's basically what I do.
I don't see you as like that kind of controversial. I mean, you're very rigid in your stance, but you're not openly inflammatory. I don't think you're just rigid.
No. It's just the nature of, taking a stance that, unpopular stances especially, but
especially in this world that we're in right now, is the stance that you and I take is kind of questioning the system of Christians. That's not very popular.
Yeah, so like when I was told that you were doing a thing on free will, I, done a bunch of videos on that. I did a bunch of research on it. It's so common sense when you look at certain verses, but it's so opposed. And one of my videos, the biggest comments that I keep getting, Atav, our mutual friend, he's hoping to join in here too, right? Okay.
That's what I was trying to figure out. I'm terrible at multitasking, so I was trying to follow the conversation and bring my guest on. Brother, nice to see you.
Yo, how you doing?
Awesome.
Hey,
Thank
Terry,
you for doing
thank
this.
you for coming in.
Yeah, well, I love this idea. I'm glad if the connection is working and we can do this.
Perfect.
I think it's good. So let me give you, in all transparency, my lack of preparation, I guess. So, Atav, what do I refer to you as? What's your name, sir?
Yeah, you can call me Atav.
Atav,
My name is Justin. You can call me Atav though, or
Atav.
Crow. People call me Crow as well.
We spoke last week. He came on Sunday and really asked me some tough questions, and I don't know how much you saw there. But I think potentially we're in a simulated reality. If we are, it would be, God's simulated reality. My first piece of content that I made called The Operating System, I made it in 2018. And the idea is that if we are in a simulated reality, the source code is the Torah. And so this idea of in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and everything that was made by the Word, and God speaking this reality into existence, could be that the Torah is literally the substrate or the information that this reality is based on. Just a fun idea. I'm not dogmatic about it. So, as Atav and I were talking about free will, I kind of gave my defense, which is that we have free will, and this is potentially even a free will simulation. And he pushed back and had some great points, and I've been thinking about it all week. So that's all the preparation I've done. I wanted to just be intuitive and answer this kind of as we talk about it. So hopefully you guys can kind of guide the conversation and see how it goes.
Sure. I mean, when in preparation for doing my videos on it, I know there's more verses yet, but I found a lot of verses that, to me, like I don't like to be dogmatic about it either, because I think there's still so much discussion that should be taking place around this, and then you just have people who are already hardline, like. In my videos, when I post anything about it, people just say Calvinist. Right. And it's like, that's not an argument. And I don't know what Calvin wrote. I've never read a single thing Calvin ever said. I don't care what he said about anything, literally. As far as I know, he said, that the world is flat. And he said that, but I'm like, okay, I quote you a Bible verse and your response is Calvin with an exclamation mark. And it's like, did he write that verse, or why are we ignoring this part? So I went and dug up a bunch of verses. I got them printed off here. So like one of my favorite ones.
Wait, before you do the verses,
sure.
There's something I would like to talk to you guys about, and Wolf sees this all the time. if you're intellectually honest, you kind of delineate where you know something or where you believe something. And when you're in this platform like we are, and you're dealing with as much information as we do, and doing as much research as we are doing, most of the time it's postulation. We believe this, whatever. When you come in the chat and you just go, "You're wrong, Calvin this, nihilist that, you just are wrong," like that's just in the end of the conversation. We need to have like a discussion, like, here's why I disagree, as opposed to just TikTok guys talking head is stupid and wrong. That just isn't productive, I don't think. So it's funny that you get that. I get that all the time. Like the Easter thing you mentioned on my Easter video. You're like, this is a good video, makes a good point. Wait till the Easter apologists come out, and sure enough, dude blasts me today. This is why you're wrong. This is why you're stupid. It's like, let's have a dialogue. We're just trying to all figure this out together.
Yeah. So like, and then, I mean, ultimately what I try to keep in mind is that there is a truth somewhere out there that none of us know. That's very obvious that none of us know what the actual truth is.
Amen.
But we have to go off of evidence. We have to use reasoning. That's why I enjoy having not debates, but, intelligent conversations. And like the idea of the simulation theory, that's a word. It's a term that we can use. It's a useful term. What does it really mean on a technical level?
Right.
Like nobody can find that out either. Even if you wanted to comprehend it, your brain will shut down in the process. You can't comprehend the idea of reality itself, whether you think in terms of classical physics. Where do the laws of nature come from? Where do the laws of physics come from? We don't know. It doesn't make sense how they originated. All the information in the universe is not a physical process. It's coded into everything. So
Amen.
Creationists, a creationist apologist, Christian scientists, whatever you want to call them, they've been using these arguments for a long time very effectively. And because they say like this, the unintelligent, randomized Big Bang sort of approach to things is actually falling apart more and more because people are realizing how genetics, like how much information is coded into our very DNA, and all the fine tuning of the universe, all those sorts of arguments. And so, yeah, it's like, I don't use the term simulation because first of all, I don't usually talk about this stuff on that level, the really metaphysical stuff. But I have no problem with somebody saying that as long as they're not roping it into a whole ideology of, there's just a computer somewhere running us, and they want to sell you on something bigger than that. It's just another term that can be useful for getting somebody to think outside the box of where did this come from and how is it being maintained.
Well, there's something I would like to talk about there, because I think it's important. I don't know if we'll ever have an opportunity to have a discussion like this again, but so what you said is absolutely true. Physical, scientific materialism, this whole like purely matter-based reality, like you said, is falling apart. The dogma, the priests of the religion of science are the only thing keeping it alive. I say that they're keeping it on life support with ironically, their religion or their dogma, their bias in preserving this narrative. But what we're learning at the quantum level, like you mentioned, at the genetic level, that they're having to invoke all these crazy ideas like the multiverse and ballistic panspermia and all of these, like, okay, we all believe something. They won't cede to us that, like, okay, we don't know, it's complicated, we could be in a created reality. They're sticking with this anti-God, no creation, militant atheist viewpoint. And I think that Christians are kind of guilty of a similar thing in saying, it's this rigid reality, we know how it works, we've read scripture, and here's what I think is coming. I think that their scientific savior for explaining the clearly designed order that we're in is going to be this simulation. And what they're going to do is it's going to be an ancestry simulation. You're already hearing it, or an alien simulation. So you have still this Darwinian process responsible for creating life. It got to a certain level of technologic aptitude, and then what it did is that's what's created us. So there is no God still in the world that the computer is. That happened through some sort of militant Darwinian process, and now that's what they're going to ascribe ownership to. So why I think it's important that you and I are talking about this and Christians are looking into it is be ready for, in the next 20-ish years, for them to say, okay, it's a simulated order, but it's future humans that made it, or it's aliens that made it. And Christians are going to go, no, it's not. God wouldn't do that. And we're going to be behind the curve, as opposed to owning it, owning the idea. And I love that you're making the differentiation. We're not saying it's in a computer, and we've never talked about this. It's not that we're in a computer. It's not that it's ones and zeros. It's that this idea of the reality being rendered around the consciousness of man in an information-based reality is viable. And to me, totally lines up with Scripture. In Romans, it says, for by faith we know that the worlds were framed by the word of God. There's a lot of kind of hinting at this idea. So anyways, I think it's just something we have to do our research, be able to give an account for it. And I think be ready for when they switch from, okay, this isn't an accident, this is a created order, and they say it's a simulation. I think as Christians, we need to be able to go, hey, that still fits in our paradigm.
Just tap the screen like crazy. Let's get likes in here, because hopefully we can do the discussion for a while, and I want, that promotes it to more people when you tap the screen, we get more likes going. That's how TikTok's algorithm work. TikToks.
Yep. Tic-tac.
You'd think I'd know how to say it by now. Okay. Well, here's like a verse to me that, let's say we just go, old-fashioned Bible style. I have so much to say about what you just said, by the way, that where the theories are coming from. Like, I've just finished listening to an audiobook for The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. If you haven't heard of that or read that, that's absolutely what you should be looking at.
The holographic universe is a Susskind's idea, isn't it? Initially, I mean, it sounds like this guy wrote a book about it, but I think
he's compiling a lot of different things, and he did it in the 90s, I believe. So obviously, quantum stuff goes back to whatever the 1930s or so, and a lot of people iterated on it, but he basically compiled it and then wanted to compile all the evidence in support of the idea that the universe is illusory, physical matter and physical reality, can be bent and distorted in all sorts of ways that seem contradictory through, basically through concentrated consciousness. If you have enough,
dude, I'm sorry to cut you off. It's so disrespectful, but this is a ridiculous thing to say, but what you just said fits in line with everything Jesus was saying. Like, you could make an argument that Jesus came to teach us about quantum physics. He said this is a reality, this is temporal, this is illusion, this doesn't matter. This reality doesn't matter. What matters is the kingdom. He said that your faith has made you whole. As you believe, so it is. He walked on water. He said you could move the mountain. He brought people back from the dead. He respawned them. Like, it was weird. And like, people are like, no, Jesus wouldn't. No, it's like, Jesus was like, you could literally look at this, and I'm not trying to start the church of the simulation, but you could literally look at it and say, Jesus was saying that he's an avatar in this reality, and that this reality is an illusion, and the reality that is real is the kingdom, that this is wrapped around this, and you're here for a certain amount of time, and you're going to end up running out of lives, and you're not going to be able to continue, and then you're going to be in front of the judgment seat, and be ready, because what you do here is going to determine your eternal state. And this is, like, what you said, I think, is totally in line with what Jesus was talking about.
It is, and there are very, very key distinctions between a Christian acceptance of how the universe, they would just call it the spiritual realm, probably, just the idea that there is a realm beyond hard matter and physics that is influenced by angels, demons, God. The key distinction really comes down to, is there a God that is outside of all of creation and above all of creation, as separate from any of us and infinitely greater? Or are we essentially creating the universe through our collective consciousness, or ancient beings created it through their projection, which is what kind of seeps into the discussion where it's, I think it's called pantheism, where the idea is that essentially the whole universe is God, and that we are just participating in the creative process through our faith or our convictions and our perceptions and our judgments and things like that. And so I'm very strongly in favor of obviously the one where God is outside and above everything before creation existed. He created it for his own purposes. We are literally, the Genesis, we're created out of the dust, and he breathed life into us. We were nothing. Had zero part in the creative process. And we get to experience his plans for us, and this ties into the free will concept, is we get to experience it as beings who have a heart, awareness. He made us in his image so that we would understand certain things. When obviously the knowledge of tree of good and evil, we have insights into the nature of things that animals don't and that other people don't. And we get to witness miracles and stuff like that too. But ultimately we are, ashes to ashes, dust to dust in our physical form. And the part of us that is redeemed, our soul can transcend that and go on to the eternal. And so that's different than what I've been researching on this idea that, yes, the universe is a simulation, but they always try to tie it into the idea that we can become God-like, or that we are like God, or that the universe itself is God.
Amen. It's so important what you said to make that distinction. And I talked to the prior guest about authorship. And it's like, okay, we're in a story. Whose story are we in? It's his story, right? This is God's story. I had this revelation the other day in our Bible study that this story that we have from Adam to Noah to Abraham, through to David to Jesus is it's his story. Literally, it's his bloodline. There was a lot of other things going on, but we were privileged to read his story. This whole reality is about Yahweh the Father, Hashem, whatever the name is that you would want to call the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, God of the Bible, and then what Yeshua did. That's the whole point of it. And so if you do research simulation, if you research intelligent design, if you're not saying that the point of this is God of the Bible, I think you're largely missing the point. And if these things that you're talking about with the New Age and this universal mindset, and Rogan is talking about it, and Russell Brand or whatever, they're like, people are starting to wake up and say, okay, we're in a designed order. We're God. No, huge mistake.
I see it right now in the comments. People are saying, we are God, you are God. Here's a guy, stop eating meat. It's the New Age. It's a package deal. It's a package deal. Once you start going down there and you start saying, we are God, we have this, because what you do is you start to elevate animals to the point of being equal, because they have consciousness, they have feelings, right? So now animals, we are just all reincarnated spirits experiencing itself over and over and replay. That's why it's a rabbit hole that leads to this self-righteous, narcissistic, New Age mentality where if I just believe it, I can manifest my own future. Collectively, we can all create the future, all of it.
Okay, so check this out. What did the serpent say to Eve? That in the day that you will eat it, you'll become like gods. Right?
Yeah, you got it.
Right? And then the thing that's crazy, Jesus says that I think when he said this, he was talking about the construct of the universe. He said that the sun shines on the good and the evil. So the scary thing is there is truth to manifestation. There is truth to believing these things into existence, even if you don't say God is creator. It's just totally against the natural law, what God had intended, but there's an effect to it. So there's power in it. And so people are gravitating to it, and they're seeing the effect because it works. It's just totally missing the point.
Yeah, that's true too. There's and you can see in scripture even that there's people who are totally unassociated with God who are doing miracles, and they're seeing the future, and they're doing things that are okay, there's a power there. You can continue to, you can keep doing. That's what the holographic universe is all about. The entire book is just compiling records of people who, for example, one of the most common and easily understood examples that they do, an experiment, is that they flip a coin in a lab setting, whatever. They flip a coin over and over and over, but they get the people involved to imagine as clearly as they can, to truly believe that it will always be heads. It will never be tails. And so they just, okay, just visualize it. Imagine it landing on heads every single time. And what happens is it starts to skew the results so that instead of 50-50, it becomes
51 or 55 or whatever.
Way more than that in some cases. It can become close to 75% in one direction.
75.
If people are in a hypnotic state, they can become convinced 100% on like a, they're not even using their rational mind anymore. They believe it so much. And then the results go even further. And it's like the idea, and they do all this different experiments and that's where the idea of quantum entanglement and that our consciousness is tied to the results in reality.
Right.
They're trying to break it down into individual phenomena. And that's where it stops sounding like New Age. It stops sounding like a religious point of view. It's just science. And so scientifically, we can do this. And if you have a bunch of people doing it at once, I don't know, 75, I think, is the high end, even in the extreme case. But like, they have different experiments too, besides just flipping a coin. Like, there's something about musical notes. I don't remember all the experiments, but anyway, they do these things. And so they're trying to prove that, we can basically defy logic. Anything that is chaotic or unknown, like the Schrodinger's cat sort of experiment, that kind of stuff, where it's like, is this thing real or is it not real? Well, if we don't know, if nobody knows, then our belief is going to have a say in what the reality is once we do finally discover it. And that's where a lot of the propaganda, if you take that logic and you run with it, it means that whoever controls the narrative of society can dictate the future.
Bro, it's what you're hitting on is so big. Atav, I'm sorry that we haven't let you speak. This is an amazing conversation. Yeah, I was hoping you would go there, and this is so important, you guys. Whoever controls the narrative controls your outcome or the manipulation of your free will. So we're going to talk about free will and how much free will we have. But if you research guys like Bernays, and I'm sure you know Edward Bernays, and you research how almost 100 years they have known how to socially engineer people to control the minutia, all the way down to the granular level of the things you're going to think and do. And this is why they're really in favor of this democratic secular order, because the democratic secular order that they're creating is they can basically at least get 51% of the people to vote on whatever thing it is that they want to get. But this goes deeper into when you didn't know what this reality was and you asked the people that you trusted, they told you, and they told you a lie, and the lie was rooted in this uniformitarianist, scientific materialist reality. And what it is that this is an accidental universe, that the universe created itself, the universe created the earth created man, you're just a mutated animal, and there's no point to this reality. And at the very core of it is the philosophy of materialism, which means eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And this idea of philosophic materialism actually begets consumer materialism. And they need you to see this reality in the only thing that we're here to do is get the thing and have sex and whatever, because tomorrow we die, it doesn't matter. And so we're forfeiting the true nature of this reality for this illusory one, this synthetic version, which is antithetical to what God of the Bible had said. And it turns out that it's making us very sick in every sense. Materialism, if you actually look at consumerist materialism, they're the sickest, most in-debt, unhappy people that there are, because it's a lie. And what was Jesus saying? Store your treasures in heaven. I don't have a home, and you don't. He was causing the people to quit their jobs and not serve mammon. And so God says, don't serve mammon, trust him for these things, focus on the kingdom. And the world says there is no God, there is no point to this reality, you're just an animal. And this was the reality that we were brought. And by controlling the information, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Meanwhile, the people in charge don't believe the thing that they're teaching you. And they're playing by the rules how the universe actually works, and they have an upper hand. It's a stacked deck because they are manipulating reality. They're using spells and energy and all the different kind of things to stay in control. Meanwhile, they tell you to go to sleep, and they have us coming and going, unfortunately.
I would say, I try to use this example with people is, imagine if you were in a family, a rich family who's part of the entertainment industry, or the behind the scenes producers and all that kind of stuff. And from your entire childhood watching how the business works that you can take an absolute trash artist who barely has any talent, they will never make it if on their own. And your uncle decided to create a marketing campaign around this guy and say, this is the next big thing. And they pump that message out. They get it, whatever little connections they have. They don't have to do a lot. And then suddenly this guy skyrockets into fame and he's whatever he is. Like, I'm not going to pick an artist just so, I would like to just to troll people, but you see that, and then that it comes true. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You say, this is the next big artist. And people don't critically question that and say, oh, is it? Why? This guy doesn't sound that good. He sounds kind of derivative and unoriginal or whatever.
Right.
But it becomes true. And now you do that hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times with movies and music and TV shows and everything.
Scientists.
The blogosphere, where you have, entire networks of connected blogs saying the same message on the same day, the same hour. They're timing it, they're coordinating it. You would start to believe yourself that you control the future. You control what is going to happen next. So even if you don't believe in the idea of people metaphysically manifesting the future, you can see it from their point of view that they would become so arrogant that they would think this is metaphysically true and we can make anything happen if we just convince enough people. One example of this in the occult level, in 2018, I believe, it was the World Summit. I'm going to butcher the name. It's some sort of World Religion Summit in Toronto. It was held. And as part of that, there's all these different religions, obviously, but including like witches. So you have like a whole Wiccan, congregation there, and these leaders are there. And because they literally believe this and they're tolerant of all of these different belief systems, they were conducting like rituals there where they were gathering together in their circles and chanting and doing things to try to, stop Donald Trump, for example, to stop a policy from happening. It wasn't rational. It wasn't write your congressman. It wasn't, get politically involved. It was here in our secret meeting. We're going to chant and we're going to draw paintings and we're going to do artistic expressions of how much we hate him. And then the cosmos will, enact what we wanted. And so that's where it's so interesting for me from the different points of view. One is a very rational self-delusion thing where you just are involved in manipulating public awareness and public consciousness to the point where they buy into it and they drink their own Kool-Aid and they think they're gods because they're used to it. And then the other one is like hardcore occult involvement where they're trying to affect the outcomes of things and override rational processes by invoking spirits or just, projecting their will into the cosmos. And now the quantum stuff more and more is being publicized as what it can all achieve and turned into a scientific thing. So that's a third way that they're pushing the same idea. So the simulation thing is a very hot topic and feels like every different ideology has something to contribute. I don't know if you want to get to the free will stuff now, but
I do. Let me make one more comment on that. Hopefully it won't go too long, but this is why I think it's so important. Hopefully this doesn't offend too many people, but I say the word shit quite a bit. I'm Irish, and that was a good family word, and people say you can't say that word. And I go, show me where in Scripture, and they say, do not have corrupt communications. And I'm like, well, that sounds more like the media to me. And they say, don't curse. And I go, yeah, don't curse. People don't realize. Talk about Christians being made inert by the power structure. We're not supposed to curse. Cursing means, I curse your field with the, blight, or I curse the this and that. And We're not to do that because that has an effect, right? You can curse yourself. Jesus says it's not what goes in your mouth, it's what comes out that matters. It's why you bless people, and this is why you be careful with what you say, because, I hear so many, I can't tell you how many Christians I've heard that tell me I can't say shit, and they say curses. I've heard them curse their children. You'll never amount to anything. You'll this and you'll that.
Ah, right.
Right. And I'm like, okay, so talk about like repurposing Christianity and making us inert, and the people in charge, using this for their advantage. They would never say that kind of thing. They would never say, I'm sick of it, or, whatever. They know how to control their mouth. Meanwhile, Christians a lot of times don't think about what they say particularly, and, they curse themselves. And I want to say this last thing. If you're a dad or if you're a mom, bless your children. It happens all the time in Scripture. Put your child on your lap and say, I bless you. I don't know what this works. I don't know how this works. In the name of Yeshua Jesus, I'm trying to stay in line with Scripture. But, Isaac blessed Jacob. He thought he was blessing Esau. Bless your children. Don't curse your children. Watch what you say. The universe is going to be responding, unfortunately. You got to keep your mind and your heart, ideally, locked on God the Father, with the goal to be to serve Him, and then make sure that we're not making huge mistakes by things that we think and say. So, anyways, we can stop on the computer simulation thing, but good discussion for sure.
Yeah. So one of the things I would just want to point out for those who are, I don't know how your audience is probably, I don't know if they're into like the Bible first sort of mentality. I am, but
we're biblical literalists, and we're conspiracy theorists, but we are full lordship, ownership of creation to the author of the Bible. So largely Christian. I mean, not the trolls necessarily, but we believe in Scripture. A lot of us are young Earth creationists. So yeah.
Okay. That's the sense that I got, and I was always happy. I've never seen you really go against that. So, like one verse that I love is Jeremiah 10:23. It says, Lord, we know that people do not control their own destiny. It is not in their power to determine what will happen to them. That's just straight up a Bible verse.
Right.
Like, that's a prophet of God saying to God that our destiny is not in our own control. And even if we have power, we don't have the power to determine what's going to happen to us.
Did you say Jeremiah 10:3?
10:23.
Oh, I'm like, that's the Christmas tree one. So I was surprised at that. Okay. Yeah, okay, so let me pull that up, Jeremiah 10, because that's pretty, I mean, when Atav and I first talked, I'm like, yeah, we have free will, and he's like, let's talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to pull that up. Continue.
Yeah, and, I got another one here, Proverbs 20:24 says, the steps of a person are ordained by the Lord, so how can anyone understand his own way? It's just another example of, and here's what, my point of view is we do have free will. It's not that we don't have choices, we don't have any will, and that it's just an illusion that we're making choices. It's that what good is our will without power and understanding to be able to overcome the things that are presented to us? It's the analogy that I use is the free will of a 2-year-old.
Right.
A 2-year-old has all sorts. They have big ideas for what they're going to do in their day, and none of it happens because they have no power. They have no authority. And the key word that I use to distinguish is the difference between volition, which is what you want to have happen, your desire, and autonomy. And autonomy is actually the word for you being able to decide what happens in your day, in your life, in your, and so the more autonomy you have, the more control you have. But we do have volition. We have the ability to want things and try to decide things. It's just, if God decides that's not how it's going to happen, it just doesn't happen. And we have to plead with him and get him to help us if we want something to go our way. Just like a 2-year-old can plead with his father and say, I really, really, really want this, please. Okay, the dad might do that. He might not. And if he does, you might regret it because, you asked for something that was stupid because you're a 2-year-old and you don't know what's actually good for you. So that's a stance I haven't heard a lot of people make. It's either there's no free will or there's total free will and autonomy. I'm curious what you think about that. And that Bible verse, of course.
So, I mean, trying to kind of simplify that argument, it would be that it's free will, but it's a limited free will. It's like you've got like bumpers, like in bowling, right? Like you've got a certain amount of free will, but you're not going to totally change God's plan. Would that be accurate, do you think?
I don't like that because to me, the concept of the free will itself is an internal thing. And so the ability, like the other analogy is like a slave or a prisoner. Have all the free will you want inside of a prison cell. You know, you're not going to go and achieve those ambitious ideas that you have. And the Bible says that we are slaves to sin. We are slaves to the flesh, all these types of terms where although we have the free will, I believe in almost, I don't know if our free will is tainted by the influence of our flesh, of our ignorance, of the influences around us. So I like to think of it as being a very strong and real free will. It's just the other factors that are actually at play around us that we can't see or we don't have control over, they negate the effect of our free will to the point where only those things which are really permitted by God or blessed by God or, you know, I think there's all sorts of areas in life and in the world where God doesn't care that much and it's not a critical issue whether you bought orange juice or apple juice at the store. Like it's not, you know, it's not this micromanagement of God. He's got prophecies and big picture things that are foreordained that need to happen. And those things will happen, but it's like, who gets to be on which side of that disaster? The ones that escape versus the ones that, you know, get caught in the tornado or whatever it is. That's where you start to see, and that's where you start to see miracles happen, and you start to see odd coincidences and unlikely things happen. Truth is stranger than fiction so many times. And it's like God is working in a lot of important things. And so our free will is effective up to a limit. I guess that's what I would say. It's not that our free will is limited. It's that it's only effective up to a limit.
I think that's totally fair. I don't see any flaws in that argument. And I think I would probably be similar. I think when Atav and I initially talked, you know, he had some scriptures, many are called, but few are chosen, you know, that kind of thinking. And we were really discussing, like, are they chosen, like, because of their action, or were they preordained chosen? And that's definitely something I'd be interested in talking more about. That's like the one kind of research I really did going into this. But intuitively, I believe that it was a very difficult, I don't say it's difficult, I don't want to speak for God, but your children having free will, you know, you find out when you're a parent that, you know, do you hover over them and not let them fall, or do you let them fall and learn from it? You know, you've got to baby-proof the house, but like as they get older, you almost have to let them make some mistakes. And it's hard as a parent. You said micromanage, kind of control everything that happens. Well, if God is doing that, what would be the point of this trialsome, difficult reality if God's just going to be manipulating the thing that we just are totally adherent to the thing that he had in mind? So I think it's complicated, number one. I don't think I have particularly an answer, nor will we maybe know until we get to heaven. But for the sake of the argument, I believe that we have basically 100% free will. And that however this happens, this 100% free will happens, it still results in the plan that God had intended. And that can seem like a cop-out, or it can seem like maybe even a disingenuous answer. But let me give you an example. With Passover, I believe that the Passover event happened historically, archaeologically, anthropologically. If you research the Ippapur Papyrus, I believe I'm saying that right. If you research the real Mount Sinai Exodus Trail, you know, you've got the chariots in the water, you've got the rock at Horeb, you've got the burnt mountain, you've got the altar at the bottom of Sinai, you've got the 12 stones, the sacrifice pits, the whole thing. It fits Exodus exactly. I think that happened. So, okay, Exodus happened. And that was a result of Pharaoh having free will, not releasing the children. I understand God hardened their hearts, and I have, I think, a really good explanation for that, which actually goes to how I think this free will thing actually works. But this event happened. The firstborns died. You didn't have to be Jewish to sacrifice the Passover lamb. You just had to believe the thing that God had been doing, see with your eyes the plagues that had happened, protect your family by listening to what God had said. Death passes over. The Jews leave there, they wander around, that whole story. Well, I believe it happened. And then at this time of year, we do the Passover as Christians. And if you either are Messianic Jewish or you're a Christian that's done the Seder, this thing where you end up, you do the afikomen bread, and you do the bitter herbs, and you go through this whole Passover. You drink the wine, you break the bread. The kids look for the bread. The whole thing. It's so representative of Jesus. So now, in some bizarre quantum physical way, the event actually happened. Pharaoh had free will. The children of Israel had free will. They disobeyed God the whole time. They were doing all kind of orgies and being pissed off and just being obstinate children. This thing happens, and it's a total prophecy of what Yeshua was going to do. And then Yeshua's on the earth, and he has free will, and everybody around him has free will, but he ends up being sacrificed on or just prior to Passover. We're trying to figure out the chronology of when that exactly happened. And he fulfilled the Passover by being the Passover Lamb of God. So somehow it happened in the Exodus, and it was a shadow of what was to come, and it happened again with Yeshua, and everybody had free will, but the overall plan was accomplished. I don't know how it works, but I believe that the Jews and the Pharaoh, and they all had free will, and that everybody in Jesus' time had free will, and God knew it was going to happen. And in some quantum physical, outside of our ability to understand way, God's will was accomplished, and the story that was told told of another event that was going to happen. And so I think that we have this complicated free will simulation where we do have free will. If I wanted to go, I don't want to say a negative thing, but if you wanted to go do something outrageous, you could do it. How does that affect the scope at the end? We don't know. How is the World Economic Forum accomplishing exactly the one world secular order they talked about, including the digital identification and this green horse deal potentially? And like have they read the book? Are they trying to accomplish it? Is God's will just going to be accomplished regardless? So I know it's kind of a cop-out answer, but my answer is I believe that we have actual 100% free will. God in his grace has saved me multiple times. I don't know how that works. I praise him for not having me die in multiple instances, but I had the free will to get myself into that trouble, and he bailed me out in his mercy, and that his will is going to be accomplished empirically. But I think we have free will. I don't know if that's an answer, but that's where I'm at.
Well, I'm actually very surprised that you brought up that specific example, and then with the Pharaoh. I mean, I'm sure Romans 9 says, Paul is writing and he says, "For the scripture says to Pharaoh, for this very purpose I have raised you up, that I may demonstrate my power in you, and that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth." And in Exodus, or it says that he hardened Pharaoh's heart. Right. Which is this term that gets used by Calvinists, by people who don't even want to accept that free will is a real thing, which I don't go that far. But I think that God can make an exception at a certain time with a person that he knows is going to be used for evil, because he knows that. And he says, okay, since you're going to be used for evil anyway, I'm going to make this interesting, and I'm going to let you become this conceited. I'm going to harden your heart at this time. I'm going to basically double down on what you were already doing. And then just like how somebody who's serving God, he can lead them into greater truth. He can open their eyes to certain things. It's like, it's not a outright, this person was just trying their best and serving God, and then just like a light switch, suddenly they become evil because God decided or anything. It's going to naturally make sense and be just in a sense. It will be a just decision.
Amen.
And so in that sense, I think there are times when people's will and their impulses, like, again, scientists love to point out that a lot of our physical, they want to reduce free will from the point of view that it's chemical reactions happening, that before we're even consciously aware of what we feel,
Right.
it's already happening in our brain, and then we react to it and justify it retroactively.
Which you could easily argue that is the pulse of information, because the problem with that neuroscientific explanation, in my opinion, is that negates the idea or excludes the idea of spirit or consciousness being separate from the body. Like if our consciousness is wired into our body somehow, whatever this connection is, Bluetooth or something, I don't know, but however our consciousness would be connected into this reality, it could be that our consciousness is like, okay, send the signal. If you just did this as a flow chart, the signal comes into the brain first, fires up. Okay, now we're going to do something, and because, like, in a sense, like if we are avatars, we have this earth suit, but we have this spirit inside of us. What does that look like as far as when the information coming from our consciousness, our spirit, activates our body? There might be this neurochemical reaction prior to we actually animate or whatever. And to me, that's just a signal coming from spirit or our consciousness into our brain. So, I mean, again, as a lot of the science, I think, is faulty in this total.
Yeah, I agree.
But because they forfeit, they say that we don't know what's happening, but we know there's no God. And I've been saying for a long time now that if you're trying to figure out a problem, and in your formula you have one of the variables wrong, you can never get the right answer. And so they say there is no God, and if there is a God, that means that they just can't get the right answer. So they go, oh, it's a product of the mind, as opposed to going, oh, it could be spirit sending that information, but they refuse that idea.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, in terms of how the new science, which is really separate from the hard materialism, the quantum sort of level where they're reintroducing a lot of spiritualism in through other ways, they have no problem saying that, for example, that your past life, I wouldn't believe this if I hadn't read the book and heard all these scientists chiming in on it. I would have thought it was a very fringe point of view. Relatively speaking, it might still be, but it's surprising how many scientists are actually down with the idea that, yes, we do have consciousness that transcends our mortal form, our body. It's not just chemical processes. And, it's like you said, as long as it's not God, as long as it's not the biblical narrative, they're okay with the idea that even reincarnation and the idea that between your different lives, you decide what kind of hardships you need to experience in your next life.
Right.
And so you have this, people who have near-death experiences. That's another one of these phenomena that they measure and document. And so there too, they say, well, if people who are essentially dead and then they come back to life, they report this kind of stuff happening. So, all right, now it's a scientific fact, from these scientists who believe it. But again, it's just us deciding it. And so, yeah, they're even okay with that idea of
they will believe the most ridiculous, unbelievable things to try to work around, basically, specifically God of the Bible.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, ballistic panspermia. It's hilarious. It's somehow an alien put life on Mars, and then a comet hit and like a cue ball bouncing off of a ball flew to the Earth, and then this, comet came down and survived entering the atmosphere, and that's where DNA came from. And like Dawkins is big into this because Dawkins hates God. And he's gonna prove this reality without a God. And so it turns out that it's an entirely biased-based kind of religious traumatic experience deduction, and they're so blind and they're biased that they can't see that it's not Occam's razor. I'm a big adherent to Occam's razor. It's why I'm a globe earther. It's why I am a believer in intelligent design, because if it looks like everything points to an intelligent designer, I think that you have to go that direction. So the free will thing, I made a note because we're going to go into science and simulation. That's a really fun discussion and what we're doing here. But going back to the Pharaoh before we get too far from that.
Sure, yeah.
I had this idea. We have a Discord group, and we do like what I call peer-to-peer Bible studies. Nobody leads it. It's just other Christians like critically looking at Scripture, trying to be led by the Holy Spirit. And so it's been really beneficial for a lot of us that are doing it. So one of the persons asked the other day about free will and the Pharaoh, And I had this idea, and I hope it was the Holy Spirit, but if it doesn't resonate with you guys, then it might have been my own machination. But the hardening of the heart of the Pharaoh, even though he was pushed to the point of, fine, I'm getting these people out of here. You killed my son. I can't take any more. He still rescinded. He still doubled back. He still changed his mind about it. So even having been pushed to that brink, the fact that he still went back on what he said in his contempt shows to me that at the first one, if God hadn't hardened his heart, they wouldn't even have made it to the Red Sea. As soon as he was like, okay, you can go, he's like, wait, why did I do that? He's going to immediately, if he went to that far breaking point and he still went back on it, I postulate that the hardening of his heart was actually the grace of God trying to have him do this thing without being totally destroyed. And so the note that I made is, what if God will manipulate free will in his grace with the hope of giving a person a chance to accept his mercy or listen
To basically open up their eyes, in a sense, by having a dramatic event happen or something along that line, or
open
more
their
internal
eyes.
than that?
Both, but I don't know what the exact thing would be, but like if this random thing that was going to happen was there was no chance that at some point there would be resolution, that the person turned to Christ, turned back to God, whatever, repented, or whatever the thing would, maybe that would be where, let's just say a car crash, God allows it to happen. Say that God knows that I know this is being inconsistent, so I apologize, but if he gives this person a little bit more time, having seen the end from the beginning, knowing being outside of time, maybe he would be more willing to give someone another chance if that free will, if that grace extension allowed them to do what God was asking them to accept Yeshua, to, not die in their anti-God bias. Just an idea, but I can tell you, for me personally, multiple times I could have died, multiple times. And I mean, I've covered it on the live, I'm not going to bore you with it, but car accidents, landing on my head, crashing into guardrails, and every time that God spared me supernaturally, all I could do is just fall on my face and say, thank you for giving me another chance. Please help me to make good on this. And some people aren't given that. So maybe, just a theory, maybe, if it's like the discussion of many are called but few are chosen, maybe there are persons that need another chance because they are going to accept it, just not at that point. And so God in his grace extends that opportunity. And maybe, again, totally speculative, maybe the persons that aren't granted that second chance, no matter how much time they'd have been here, they would have never changed their heart. And so it was just already done. Yeah, this is I can't do anything about this.
So in a case like that, like first of all, I have had a situation where God spared my life. It doesn't make any sense, really. At least I would have been badly injured and crippled or something like that if it had happened. It's not a very interesting story, but it's something that happened when I was a kid, and so I totally believe that events are arranged, and the laws of physics and everything can just sort of be manipulated when needed to make sure that certain things happen. So in that sense, right, I'm sure there's a proper term for that. I don't know what it is, but for me, that's separate from free will. I'm curious where you think that's a free will issue. Do you think that it's the decisions leading up to the potential crisis that are manipulated to make it happen? Or do you just think that because God intervened in something that was going to naturally happen, that's just part of the free will discussion because it's not natural cause and effect?
Right. Not natural cause and effect is a really interesting idea. So I would say it like this. First off, full speculation, fun to talk about. I don't know. I mean, I know it's a little bit of a cop-out, but I in particular, when I'm dealing with things related to the creator of the universe, I don't want to misrepresent him or, project my false ideas onto his grand scheme, grand plan and character. So I just want to be careful when I say this kind of thing. But as far as being spared from a situation, like you said, you were spared. and look at what you're doing now. I was spared, look at what I'm doing now. Not that what we're doing is great, but the intention is serving the living God. Many are called, but few are chosen. Well, what if, like, thinking about it just from a purely simulation standpoint, and I don't even mean like we live this out. I mean, like, you put the things in place and hit run and see what happens. It's entirely possible that God sees, the heart of a person, and that, if this unnatural fluke, terrible thing that happened is going to happen to that person, they don't accomplish this thing or don't get to know Jesus. Maybe they die in that sin or whatever. Maybe he is willing to be more gracious, because in the situation that you and I are talking about, and the other people that are saying this in this room, it's like, God spared me, and they're saying, I serve the living God, he did this thing. So people die and go to hell. I mean, I hear this all the time in near-death experiences. That's like a really weird thing. People that are like, there's no way they could ever believe in God. Next thing you know, they're in hell. And they always go, Jesus. They always think Jesus. Wow, it was true. And they ask for Jesus. And then God reanimates them. He respawns them. He brings them back up, and they run around. I met a person like this when I was just a child. He was burned terribly. He had crashed on a motorcycle, and he went to hell. And he was like talking about Jesus in a really serious way. I remember seeing this burnt man going, hell's a real place. Look at how burnt he is. And so I don't know. I don't know why he causes the sun to shine on one and not on the other, or causes shine as evil. I don't really know. You said just earlier. I lean on that he is the good creator, the good judge, and that what he accomplishes will make sense when we're outside of this temporal, ability to understand. I mean, we've got 5 senses. We can barely see anything in the light spectrum. We're very, we're incapable of knowing a lot. So I think that we will know. But I believe we have free will, and that's important, because when you get into this predestination, I think it becomes new agey really quick. I hear people say all the time, well, that was God's plan. I'm like, no, that was a bad decision. I've seen like making people make bad, like, what a terrible thing to say that, I was speeding, going really fast, and I ran over somebody's dog. I'm like, well, God works in mysterious ways. Like, I think we have free will, and especially in what we can control. I think we have 100% free will. But I think God, in his mercy, whether you say I don't say he blurs it, because he's just. Everything he does is fair, but he's able to tweak it if needed. And I don't know if it's just that it was an unfair and unjust thing, and that's what God did, or it's to create the end bigger plan.
Well, see, this is where I love the Bible for these stories that don't in any way tell you what the moral of the story is, but when you actually look at it through the lens of a certain topic like this, you start to ask questions like, and I believe where he was staying, there was like 3 or 4 people who it said that they were in the spirit. They were speaking on behalf of God and saying, don't go to Jerusalem. Something bad will happen if you go there. They didn't know what it was, but they were telling him not to go. And Paul refused all of them. He rejected all of that. Because of his will, he decided to go. And that's why he ended up getting locked up and having all the trouble that he had. And it's like, okay, so there's God using other people to try to intervene, but clearly not just overriding his free will, respecting his free will, and then still using him in the end, despite warning him, to accomplish all the writing of these epistles and things he wrote while he was in prison. And the experience obviously still fed back into what he was destined to do, but the path was different now. It's like he took a detour to the same end.
So I think we should talk about many are called, but few are chosen. Atav, you had mentioned that. I don't know if you would want to even impart on it, but I've been giving that a little bit of thought today, and to me it kind of sums up my belief on free will, if I can formulate the words correctly. But in context of the verse in John, he's talking about the wedding, and he invited his people, and they didn't come. They were too busy with the cares of this world. They refused to go. And then he invited people on the street, anybody he could get his hands on. He invited everybody. And then the one guy didn't have the right outfit. It's like, throw them in hell. Basically, it's like, that's a heavy. Make sure you get your outfit correctly. Which I think I have a little bit, maybe potentially explanation for that. And then, many are called, but few are chosen. I mean, I'm wildly paraphrasing, but should I answer, or should I ask you what you think that means before I give my idea? What do you want to do?
Well, for me, I mean, I got to admit that I take that pretty face value of just, I combine that with one or two other verses where it says, "No one can come to me unless the Father has drawn him." That's what Jesus says, and he uses that in a very specific story example where these people turned away and stopped following him after he said something they didn't like. And it's like, to me, that's
he even pushed him. That was the whole "eat my body, drink my
right
blood" thing.
So he basically provoked them into doing what he knew they were going to do, and then said, "See, I told you, only those that the Father chooses can even really have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, necessary." And so in that case, it's like, you may as well just discard them. He may as well just get it over with and stop, get these people to stop following him, because they're not going to, it almost sounds like.
It reminds me of the Pharaoh. It reminds me of the Pharaoh. God knew that the Pharaoh was going to double back. He was trying to skip the headache, and he hardened the heart to get it to a position where finally Pharaoh was like going to stick with the idea, which he even still didn't do. So what should God have done? Harden his heart again and again and again and eternally. He was never going to make good on it, whatever. With this whole thing with Jesus and the bread, I love that you said what you did, because I agree. He said the hard thing to test them, and they said, "Jesus, this is a very hard," and they were eating up every word he was saying. They knew he was the Messiah, and they were like, "Please, anything you would say." And then he goes, "Yeah, eat my body and drink my blood." And they're like, I can't do it. But he was talking about the Passover later, or the matzah and the wine. If you would have trusted, or the matzah and the wine. If you would have trusted him and stuck with him. But he used that challenging thing and their inability to conceive of what he was actually saying to separate the true believers from the not true believers. So here's the question. Only the ones that the Father call to me, only the ones the Father allow are going to follow me. Does that mean that God preordained it? Or does that mean that God knows what you're going to do because he's outside of time and space? He knows that you are going to, follow Jesus to the end. You're not going to be offended by these things. So he goes, "Yeah, I know that guy. I know what he does." And I was talking to my wife about this today, and I was thinking about a flag football game. I don't know if you guys play a lot of American football in Canada, but when you play a flag football game, you play with all your buddies. And you know who's a good receiver, who's fast, who's a good quarterback, and you make your picks, and you go, "I don't know what they're going to do, but I've played with them before, and I know that he's a good football player. He may make some mistakes," and you make these decisions. I want this guy on my team. So it's almost like, to me, God. It's not that God was just arbitrarily saying this person is good. I can see it. I just have a feeling about this person. It's almost like God knew what they would do and they would make good on it. And this is the idea of many are called but few are chosen, or in that scenario, Jesus at that time has some kind of limited understanding. I apologize. Hopefully that didn't seem like I was being blasphemous. I'm not trying to be, but he's man and God. Somehow it's confusing, but he's constantly praying and he's asking God for wisdom, and he's looking.
Right. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So he's like, "God, which one? These ones? Got it. Thanks." It's like a little bit of a hack, but not based on that they were predestined to do it, but that God knew what they were going to do and vouched for them.
Well, this is where, like, I love going to the scripture for this, but I will give, my personal testimony of this, where I grew up in a Christian family, going to Sunday school and believing in it. And I even read the Bible, which was like already before I was even a teenager, is way beyond what other people were doing. I felt very proud of the fact that I was doing this, and I thought I was a very good Christian. And I was very, very judgmental, very I've actually read the Bible, and I believe in God and I prayed sincerely and things. So was, I believed I was totally cooperating with what God wanted. And then an event basically where I was chatting in the early days of, I remember MSN chat and like those old messenger programs. I was talking with somebody who I knew, and we were talking about the idea of being perfect, or she said something like nobody's perfect. And I literally said, I am perfect.
Oh,
And she was like, no, you're not. How could you say that? And I'm like, no, I am, because I was doing a mental checklist in my head of, have I committed these sins, the 10 Commandments? Did I do those things? No. Or I repented of them, and I whatever. Anyway, I justified it in my mind, and it was like less than a minute later, I had this feeling like somebody was watching me, like this really I've never felt it like that before. Like there was somebody in the room
and not happy.
and yeah. And I literally I had to turn around and look, even though I knew the room was empty. And there was a Bible sitting on the desk. I don't know whose Bible it was. It was somebody else in my family, I guess, but normally there wouldn't have been a Bible there. And when I looked at it, it was like my world shattered, and it felt like the floor fell out from under me. Wow. And it was like I had tunnel vision, because I knew I was going to hell. It was just like that quick. Just
wow.
I had been judging myself, because when I looked at the Bible, what I realized was that I had totally been judging myself by my own standard. I created my own, what I considered a very high standard, and I had been judging myself by that the whole time. And so that led to what was probably, it felt like forever, but it was probably more like 45 minutes to an hour of me crying under my blankets and trying to beg God to not send me to hell. And it was like, wow. I didn't, even though I prayed and I read the Bible, I knew that all the words, faith and the sacrifice of Christ, I knew all of it on paper in theory. When it came to that moment where I was convicted and I realized that I was damned, it was like, it didn't even occur to me that that's what Jesus was supposed to do. So it was this process where as I was talking to God, I realized that there's nothing I can do. I kept asking God to give me a second chance to prove myself. And wow. What I had to realize,
you were just sticking with it, huh?
I was doubling down. I can do.
Like, I know you took that the wrong way. I may not be perfect, but I'm really good. Let me show you. That's so funny.
Yeah, let me try again. This time I'll do extra good.
Double plus perfect.
I'm a very stubborn person, and so in the end, I realized, that I once I finally gave up on that, that's when I started to realize that I, had to rely actually on His mercy and what that meant and everything. And so, to me, that event, I get very emotional just thinking of it. That was an intervention. That was not me choosing anything. I already, in my mind, made up my decision. I'm a good Christian. I'm doing what God wanted. God slapped me and just absolutely contradicted everything that I felt and believed. I made my choice, and I was going to go to hell. And that's what my free will was good for. It was good for absolutely nothing. Amen. Except to send me to hell. So I can't say that it was because I'm compatible with God's will, or He knew I was such a great guy that I would end up being a good guy on His team. I was totally trash, self-righteous, right, and hellbound until He intervened and opened my eyes. And at that point, I can't deny that it was all His doing, not my doing. So I don't know how to reconcile that without just saying that it's Him, it's not me. And He can, kill you and make you reborn if He decides. And that is a humbling experience, but it's so different than me freely choosing.
So I absolutely love that story. I don't want to marginalize what God did, because it absolutely sounds like you had, like you said, God spared you. But I also think that you could have not. There's people that God has tried to reach and done those kind of things too, and they haven't responded like you did. So I think there's a little bit of like here you are as a grown man, remembering that experience, still holding on to serving the living God. And so it was a recalibration. It was a divine intervention for sure. But I also believe that it was, that you were a worthwhile project. Sometimes reclamation projects, so, anyways. But I say that and it feels dirty because, like you said, this was purely the grace of God. So it's complicated. That's a good thing for me to remember what you just said. It's certainly not. We're not going to impress God with our righteousness, and I think that the idea is to try to understand that you're broken, try to understand that he is just. People say, why would you fear God? Like, he created the universe, he's seen everything you've ever done, he is judging you for the things that you're doing, and he can destroy you. What's a man going to do, kill you? That doesn't matter. God can destroy you. Just what about wanting to please your Father, and the Father of the universe, the creator of the universe, sees your works and he's disappointed. Oh, that's going to be brutal, right? That's going to be absolutely brutal. So to try to have that recalibration with God and try to say, I'm a sinner, you are God, I serve you, approach the throne on your knees, don't become entitled, he's not a genie. I think if you're doing those kind of things, I think that I would like to think that his grace is more likely, more attainable, as opposed to just rigid God defiance. And I talk to a lot of atheists, I talk to a lot of Satanists. There's this new breed of Satanists who, LaVeyan Satanists, who just hate God. They think he's a fascist. They love Satan because Satan represents opposition to this tyrannical God.
Right, yep.
And I talk to them and I plead with them, and they just attack God. And, eventually it ends up kind of being like, well, you have the free will to do that. And I hope you change your heart before you find out that he is real, because he's not going to be impressed by that kind of thinking. And as far as all the universalists and stuff, I've seen a lot of chats in here. Love, it's all about love. It is about love, but it's about God's love for us. It's about God's undeserving love for us. It's about what Yeshua did. We were talking about the simulation earlier, and a lot of people have seen Ready Player One. And there's a scene in Ready Player One, I only watched it once a few years ago, but where the creator of Ready Player One goes into the game, and everybody's like, oh, the creator, they're like really excited, and he's like, oh, I've got a game for you, and blah, and they're like kind of worshiping the creator. If in that movie Ready Player One, the creator showed up, and the entire Ready Player One universe attacked and brutally killed him for no reason, that would have been a very bad movie, and people would have walked out of the movie theater. It would have made you sick to your stomach. Why would they turn on the programmer and kill him like that? And that's what Jesus did. This is something we remember this time of year. He came into the system, and we received him not. And it wasn't just the Jews, it wasn't just the Romans, it was we with our sin. We crucified him, and he suffered that for us. And I think it's a really important thing to try to remember. And if you can try to grab that idea that Jesus was spit on and kicked and beaten, and he said, God, forgive them, that's the love. This isn't about love, we're good, the universe. It's that God loved us, right? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. So I'm sorry to get like,
he loved us before we loved him. That's another thing that it says, is that while we were still ignorant and we were still in our sin, he loved us. So it's the cause. That's the question, is which one came first, I guess, is always the question in the free will discussion. Is it because he loved us that we can love him? Or because what I really oppose, and I guess that's the moral of the story that I was trying to say, is that with my own testimony is that there are people who want to take credit for their own salvation, even if it's just one little part. Just give me a
Right.
tiny little piece of the credit. I did listen to the message and I accepted it, and it was me that actually ended up making the right choice. Even if Jesus did all of the sacrifice on Easter, he did all of the hard work.
Right.
I did that one last little bit,
I
and
was
it's
good
like,
enough.
yeah, and I was smart enough I saw, oh, okay, yeah, I should listen to this gospel message. And for me, I take it to the level where we talk about the afterlife and, eternity. People can be grateful up to a point. If you do something nice for somebody,
Right.
but
It's limited.
but they feel like they kind of deserved it,
Right.
then they're not going to be thankful for very long. It's like, you kind of just gave me
Right.
what I deserved. Now you
Right.
take that and you stretch it into literal billions of years. If you have even one part of yourself that thinks, I'm actually the one, I mean, yeah, Jesus, thanks, you did this nice stuff for me, but I said my prayers and I did a big part too.
Right.
Sooner or later, you're going to say, I'm kind of tired of giving you credit, God. Like, what about
Right.
my part? What do I get for the good things I did? So good things I did. So it's dangerous to give yourself credit for anything, even if I would rather flawed in that direction than the other way. You know what I'm saying? I'm curious what ATAB has to say about all of this too.
Yeah, I've just been kind of a student at this point, just taking everything in. I appreciate the words of both of you, and I'm glad we were actually able to come together and discuss this. And I kind of I've been stuck on the point earlier made by both of you guys. You guys kind of came to a consensus that, we have free will and we are able to, make these choices and have these desires and try to fulfill our desires and such things. But what I've been trying to rationalize in my head is that I'm sure we can all agree that God is omniscient, meaning he's all knowing, meaning he knows the beginning from the end. So is there a decision or a choice that can be made by mankind or any being outside of that omniscience? Because if there is, then that means that he's not omniscient. And if there isn't, then that means that we really don't have any say so because there's not a choice we can make outside the omniscience. I can't rationalize that in my head. That's why when I talk about these, when I have these discussions, I kind of make it black and white, as you mentioned earlier. Like, it's either you have free will or it's all predestined because they had one point.
So I want to thank you, ATAF, for putting this together, for joining my
Of
show
course.
last week, and then for bringing Wolf in. This has been awesome. And I want to answer, at least to the best of my ability, what you just asked. But before I do, I want to repent publicly and also let you know, Wolf, that really hit me. You know, I'm not worthy at all, and you know, certainly like the adage that I had about being a good football player and like, oh well, he's a good receiver. I'm good at nothing, and if you know, God has supernaturally in His grace saved me. So that was good. That was a good gut check. You know, I've been doing this. I guess we'll call it a ministry. I don't mean to call it that. This operation, God gave me kind of an idea of this vision of defending the Creator in the information war, and I thought I was doing conspiracy videos. That's what I intended to do, and then this other thing has happened, and I give God the glory. But I could see how you start building up some, you know, momentum, and you go, you know, maybe God's happy with the thing I'm doing or whatever, and I feel really stupid right now. So thank you for saying that. And this time of year is really good to think about that. So that's the first thing. And then the question that you asked, Atav, I feel very resolute about the answer, which is that he, and to me, this one is pretty clear. Like you said, white and black. It's that God is omniscient, and he knows everything that is going to happen. Absolutely, he knows what you are going to do, but that you still have the free will to do it. Now we're talking about this like free will hybrid thing, and maybe there is an acceptance. I don't know particularly, But going back to the video game analogy, you know, the way that the programmers used to make video games, I'm not sure if it's the same way with Grand Theft Auto now, but, you know, in the Lara Croft days, they designed the rooms, they designed, you know, the universe for Lara Croft to exist in, and the story plays out in a certain way depending on the decisions that the player makes. And the programmers they baked every potential scenario into that. You're going to go here, you're going to jump off that, you're going to get this pack, you're not going to get that pack, you're going to do these things. So they built all of the potentiality into the game, but then it was up to the player to actually turn that into a reality based on their free will. It was kind of limited free will based on, you know, it's kind of interesting talking about that, because you weren't going to get, you know, hijack an airplane and fly to the moon in that game. It just wasn't going to happen. But you, as the programmer, you would say, I know every possible scenario because we programmed them in there. And so I believe that God has programmed in all of the potentials. I think that the collapsing the wave idea that I was talking to the first guest about before you guys came on, I think that this reality being rendered just outside of our purview, which is something that I think that there's pretty good evidence scientifically that that's happening with quantum entanglement and superposition and these different kind of things. So I think that God has programmed in all the potentialities. I think that God has given us legitimate free will. It might be, based on this conversation, 99%, 99.9%, whatever, but legitimate free will. But then being outside of time and space, he knows how it's going to unfold. He knows what you're going to do, but he still is. You still have that choice to do the thing. So it's not going to be surprised by it. He's not going to go, whoa, I can't believe that didn't happen. I didn't see that coming. He's outside of time and he knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. So, yeah, I would kind of agree in that in the sense that he does, just because he wants to, that's his prerogative, he does give his creation agency, which is us. But like, it's such a small box that even if we have these, you know, choices, it's still kind of an illusion, because any choice we make within that small box is still going to lead to our purpose created by him, because we wouldn't even have a purpose if it wasn't for him. He is the only being that really gives us purpose or will, which is actually the biblical definition.
So let me give you another way to think about it. Not that I'm right, but the way that you frame that gives the inference that this whole thing is a setup to accomplish a specific thing. Like it's a script, it's a movie. We get to this one point. I think that the reality isn't so much about what ends up happening, it's about what we do. And so, like, this reality can kind of seem mundane at times, like, oh, I gotta go to work, and I gotta go to the grocery store, and I gotta do the dishes, and whatever. Like, what's the point of this? This doesn't have some grand plan. I believe that God is the whole point of it is to see how you react in the situation, testing your character, not accomplishing this goal. Yes, I believe it's about the bride of Christ and the marriage supper of the Lamb, and that happens. God's will is accomplished. But rather than, it's like, there's this idea that, like, we all have a soulmate and we all have a destiny and there's all this serendipity and there's all of this purpose. I don't think it's about we get the thing, we do the thing. Like, people are always like, what do I do? God, give me the thing because I have to, like, what vocation, there's an example, what vocation am I going to do that is going to be what God intended? And like something God told me, I believe a long time ago, and I'm trying to say that God speaks to me, but it's like, I don't care what you do, I care how you do it, right? So like, I was a golf pro before I did this, and it wasn't like, I'll manage this golf course, I'll manage that golf course. It's how did I do with the golf course that I was given? How did I do with the employees that I had to manage? So in this idea, it's not so much this overarching, I accomplished this thing, it's what do I do in each situation.
Can I jump in here?
Please.
So this is where I love the Bible again, stepping in and giving us some hard sayings that we have to try to chew on. Like Isaiah 46 says in verses 10 to 11, Isaiah 46, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. I summon a bird of prey from the east. So he summons it, summons it. He doesn't, it's not that it was already happening. He's the one that summons it. A man for my purpose from a far off land. Truly I have spoken, and truly I will bring it to pass. I have planned it, and I will surely do it. That's a pretty bold statement about declaring the end from the beginning, summoning the things necessary to make it happen, saying, I've planned it, and I will surely do it. We're talking about absolutely the results are fixed. There's no wiggle room in what the end result is going to be. And yet I would still say that a person has free will to the extent that how you get to there, it's like a choose your own adventure story where the ending is always the same, but you still have choices. I'm curious what you think about that. I mean, there's some other verses right here in Proverbs that enhance that and go right along with it, but that's a pretty strong statement.
Are you asking me, Wolf, or ATAP?
Someone said Calvinist. I thought he said instantly.
It's like a drinking game.
He said, I see who the Calvinist is in the group now.
Yeah, see, I wonder how Calvin wrote Isaiah 46. That's what I want to know. But
I'm a Godist, not a Calvinist. So I'm going to read this. This is a lot. You've given me a couple scriptures that are a lot to process, and I don't want to say fit into my paradigm because that makes it look like I'm trying to, have scripture fit my my agenda. But I like what you said, Wolf, there, that it's that you have free will. You said choose your own adventure novel. I said in my movie, The Operating System, a fully immersive free will simulation, a choose your own adventure novel. And so I do believe that you have, this is a little bit of a cop-out. I get that. But I do believe that you have legitimate free will and that God's will is going to be accomplished. I think that they can both exist. I mean, even quantum physically, right? We have all these potentialities. We think binary, 1 or 0. That's just kind of how our brains work. And quantum physics says no. Like the whole Schrodinger's cat thing, you mentioned that earlier. You can't really fix it. You can't really, how can the cat be alive and the cat be dead? You cannot particularly reconcile it, but the science says that's what's happening. So I believe that we have free will. I'm going to say this again, but I believe that God's will is going to be accomplished. I want to read the context of this, so if you guys can carry the discussion for a minute, I want to see if contextually it makes more sense that God would say that, and if not, I guess I'm just going to have to process this.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I've got some other stuff here that shorter sayings here from like Proverbs. Proverbs 16 verse 4 says, "The Lord works everything for his own ends, for its own ends, even the wicked for the day of disaster." There's different translations of that. Some make it emphasize some parts more than others, but the Lord is actively involved in shaping what's going to happen according to his will, and what it says here is for its own ends, which in one way you can say, what was the prescribed end for this thing? The Lord is going to work it until it does that thing. He's going to continue to influence it until it happens the way he wants it to happen. It's almost, I've ended up through reading all this stuff coming to the idea that God wants, he doesn't just set things in motion, that whole watchmaker analogy or whatever it is, where he created the system and then the system plays itself out. I think God likes to do strange and radical things as he pleases,
right,
to mix things up and actually do things that are the least likely way that something would happen, not the most likely way. It's not that it's rationally leads to its own conclusion. He likes to do things in a way that is counterintuitive so that his will is even more manifest. It's more obvious that he's interfering. And that's why he chooses David to be the king that, slays Goliath. And he does these things that are so implausible that you can only step back and say, God did this.
Amen.
And I can't deny it. He's in the driver's seat, and, we're witnessing his plan unfold, and we get to participate. Yeah, that's
I totally
Um,
agree with that, like 100%. The Lord has made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for the day of trouble. This one I think is easier for me to kind of give you not as such a Calvinist, such a Calvinist like this is totally predetermined, but the Lord has made everything for its purpose, including the wicked for the day of trouble. What is the day of trouble? Challenge. I think that people ask me all the time on this, why does the devil exist? And my understanding is that the test wasn't hard enough without the serpent. I postulate that Adam and Eve would have never eaten from the apple, or from the tree. That's an apple, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil without the serpent. It was they were. We don't know how long they were in there not eating the tree, but it wasn't until the serpent came in and was like, "You guys totally eat that." And they were like, "Oh, totally." So the serpent was like brought in to make the challenge harder. With Job, we see the same thing. The devil comes in and is allowed to run all this havoc to run all this havoc to test. Is he going to be true to God? Is he going to forsake God? So this test idea happens. So think about it as an NPC. Think about it as just a variable. The idea that there would be difficulty and at the hand of people making bad decisions would just, I think, validate that it has to be a legitimate test. Here's the thing: people often are in the show. They're like, "I won't serve your God because it's too hard," or "What if there is hell? That's not fair." And like they always judge God through their like biased, limited understanding. But if you're going to study for the bar, or you're going to want to be a doctor, or you're going to want to do these things, they're going to put you through a really hard test. Military's one. You go through boot camp. You go through these drills. Things that are worth getting, there's going to be a test of your physical attributes, a test of your character. It's going to be difficult, and we don't want it to be difficult. We'd love for it to be easy. That's human nature. That's the flesh. This test is going to be hard. God said it was going to be hard. It's a race. You suffer. You go through these things. Because it's a hard test doesn't mean that God isn't good, or doesn't mean that God is a jerk, or that God isn't worth serving, or whatever. It means that whatever the reward is, the certification, the thing that we're going for is something that we have to there's going to be an effort to it. It's not going to be easy. And so the idea of the Lord made everything for its purpose, even the wicked for his day of trouble. To me, that one's easier to say. Yes, there's, even if we want to call them NPCs, there's problems. I'm playing SimCity with my son because he's 6 and I won't let him play new video games, so we're playing old Nintendo and Super Nintendo.
nice.
And we just started playing SimCity. Yeah, it's cool. We play all the Mario games and stuff. And he doesn't know. He's 6, and I'm like, well, that's what I had. I didn't even have that when I was 6. We didn't even have video games, so he can figure out fully immersive 3D realities down the road and be addicted to it later, God forbid. But anyway, so we're playing SimCity, and we did the Godzilla goes through the city. Why would you do that? That's weird, right? He was trying to reconcile it, and it's just part of the game. It's too easy if there's no Godzilla, so you got to rebuild your city. And I can see God, adding this in his goodness, this variable of difficulty, because the test has to be hard. And
See, but that sounds even more like Calvinism to me. That sounds like because I've heard the argument that, really all of reality, all of the world's history is designed for the benefit of the elect. And that if you're not one of the elect, you are an NPC. Your existence, even though it's very real and the people are experiencing it and they're heartfelt, and on Judgment Day, you can go back and review every single point of it, and it will be just. Essentially, the all of it is being worked just for the edification and the learning process, the testing of the elect along the way. And I find that to be, maybe on the very highest level. Once you strip away all of the illusions, it's something close to that. Because, obviously whoever ends up getting burned up, and I believe in annihilation, not in eternal torture for everybody. I think there are a small set of people who will be tortured forever, based on Revelation has a point at which 3 angels go and give the gospel to the entire world in their own languages. People don't take that literally. I believe that's going to be a literal future event, that literally angels will tell people the gospel. And so at that point, that's actually when the warning is given that those who take the mark of the beast after that point will suffer for eternity. Right now, we're going off of faith. We're going off of messengers, flawed human beings who are spreading the message. So I think those people today are just burned up. But anyway, so that's one of the big oppositions to the whole idea of predestination, is the idea of how unfair it would be. And I don't know how I started this this part of it, but
I was talking about the Godzilla coming through the game to make it harder, and you said that was like Calvinism.
because the idea of the NPC and the people who are just there to make the elect's life harder, or to test them, or to see what they will do, that God is essentially monitoring the elect and seeing, what are you going to do in this situation? Because I care about what you're going to do. I don't really care what that guy's going to do. I see Atav nodding his head. You like that idea?
Yeah, sorry, my mic is muted. But no, yeah, like it's things like that where it may seem to the wicked or the people of the world like as an unfair thing, but from the beginning it says that he has predestinated a certain group of people called the elect, and I would feel that in his heart he would want to more so focus on what they will do, since he will be giving his spirit to them and giving them up for adoption into being transformed to the image of his son. So he's going to care more about how they react in certain situations, how they behave, and the different trials he can send their way and how much they can endure. I would think that would be more so his prerogative. And, again, pertaining to NPCs, he wouldn't really care. They're wicked anyways. He's like, yeah, you guys are wicked, so I'm going to use your wickedness to, test my elect. And I already know you're going to do wicked, but my elect, they can either do wickedness or they could, do something that's good, that's righteous. I'm going to test them to see that. And that's where, that's kind of how I'm rationalizing that.
The elect thing, that interests me. I don't think I've ever heard that like that. So you're thinking like the 144,000? Because I think the idea of the elect that I had would be the people that choose, Jesus, that that believe the scriptural progression, they believe the plan of salvation, they accept Yeshua. That's what I understood as elect. But you see it like as a smaller group?
Well, not when I say small, I mean like it's definitely a minority.
The Bible describes there being millions of people in heaven. In Revelation, it's definitely not going to be the 144,000 at the end. It can't be small in that sense. It's small relative to the billions of people, but Jesus also says that, few will find it. The few will find the path that leads to life.
He said narrow is the path.
Yeah, straight is the gate, narrow is the path. Yeah. But the idea of the elect actually ties into something else that's said in Revelation. I don't have that on hand, but it's that everyone whose name was written in the book of life before the foundation of the world, they are the ones that are going to go to heaven. So on the highest possible level you can look at it, it's like God set out a challenge for himself before the world was even founded. He had a limited number of people, and then he ran the simulation and said, these are the people that are going to make it. Let's see how that happens. I've recently did a YouTube lecture, 2-part YouTube lecture. If people want to look up WOLFPOX on YouTube, literally asking, why did God bother with Israel? Why did God bother with any of this middle period of history before Jesus? Why drag it out and all this stuff? The best I can figure out, God was, and this is all hypothesis, obviously, I don't know anything. God's infinitely more wise than me. But it's actually to also teach the angels how his will works, and let them be a witness to everything he is doing, so that they can attest to it on Judgment Day. They can also divide the angels that are going to be obedient to God from the angels that are not, because we know that for example, a third of the angels go down with Satan when there's the war in heaven. There's this whole idea that even the angels, they're flawed. They're not omniscient. Only God is omniscient. Only the God the Father knows everything. Angels don't actually know his plan. It all speaks to this idea that God had this book of life from the beginning. The angels basically are the only ones besides God who get to actually witness all of human existence play out. And so they get to see, maybe they even know I don't think they probably know the list, but they would, be able to see how God works so many things in so many different ways to make that unlikely conversion of that sinner who, by all rights, should just go to hell. It seems so unfair to the angels even why he would do this, that they get to see the pattern unfold over and over and over, that what is just to them, what is proper in their eyes, that this wicked person should just be killed and go to hell. Like, look at all the evil things they've done. No, God actually flips it upside down. That person ends up being his greatest servant, Saul of Tarsus, blind him in the street, direct intervention. Now he's going to be one of my greatest servants. Rather than just destroying the wicked or allowing the wisdom of the world to prevail, he says that he's going to make the wisdom of the world foolishness, or that the gospel is preaching this foolishness to the world. And there's all these inversions that God does that all speak to his sovereignty, his ability to defy logic, defy what people think is right, and end up magnifying himself in the process. And I'm reading here, like Proverbs 21, verse 1, it says, "The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, like channels of water. He turns it wherever he wants." And it's like, we're talking about rulers of the world, the most powerful people. He turns their hearts wherever he wants it to go. Right. So there's a level on which, and if you think of angels as being above kings, in the divine realm, I don't know how that applies to angels, but again and again, we see this pattern of God allowing things to play out and then suddenly inverting it in a way that becomes ironic, or in retrospect, you have to just give God more credit. And I feel like that's the real pattern you see unfold across the Bible is that there's a certain way things were going. God steps in, suddenly everything changes. The weak becomes strong, the younger becomes the superior to the older, all these stories of the Old Testament. And if we apply that to our personal lives, it's really about who has faith in him and his goodness and his plans, and doesn't try to impose their own morality and think that they know better than him, that he's going to end up, those are going to be the elect. And that's why the elect often have such a surprising conversion, or why Jesus, for example, went to the sinners and the prostitutes and the people who were the least likely, the least worthy in the eyes of everyone. I don't know. I just love that as a pattern that I've seen where, and then, the evil people, Satan, the angels who doubt, they all end up playing their part in helping it. But often the great evil is that they were self-righteous, or they thought that they knew better, and they're trying to impose a more rational cause and effect. The Judgment Day is going to end up being very interesting, where you have all these people, like Jesus said, many will say to me, "Lord, Lord, didn't I do all these great things for you?" Those people are not going to be saved. And then you'll have people who were converted on their deathbed, or, people who don't deserve it so little, who actually end up being glorified. And
when Jeffrey Dahmer's there and the pastor isn't, because I don't know if you know this, but Dahmer at the end, he was watching Kent Hovind movies and he accepted Jesus, and he goes, and this is no defense for Jeffrey Dahmer, but he said, I believed in evolution. I thought I was an animal. I thought there was no point. Now I know that, God is real. I wish I wouldn't have been told that. I can never take back what I did. I'm sorry. I understand God is going to judge me, or he's going to forgive me, but I believe Jesus died for my sins. And who knows? Right? There's the centurion who was beating his chest saying, God, I'm not worthy. And Jesus said, he's going to be more, he's going to leave there with a sense of redemption that the religious person isn't going to. I would like to, the Science with Simon guy said something that's kind of stuck in my craw, and I think this is important from like kind of an actionable item. He says, what's the point if he knows who both groups are? Literally, why watch this movie? And exactly in line, I think, with what you were saying, Wolf. This is like us as humans raised and programmed into materialism in this consumer reality that we're in. We've been, I think it's C.S. Lewis that says, or no, I think it was actually the movie The Devil's Advocate. I haven't thought of this in a long time. But in the movie The Devil's Advocate, there's this really scary scene where I think Al Pacino is the devil, and he's telling whoever, Keanu Reeves, or whoever the character is, like, how he gets man to ruin himself. And he goes, I give man these desires, and then I fulfill them, and I do this in the aggregate, and I can ruin man. And I know C.S. Lewis talks about that too with the Screw Tape Letters. So we, from a young age, we were taught that, what do I want? What can I get? How can I appease my flesh? I want this thing. I want a hot drink. I want a cold drink. I want a sweet drink. I want a sugary drink. I want protein. I want this. I want that. We constantly, I want to look at this. I want, like, constantly filling our own desires and satiating ourselves. And so in this consumerist reality that I think that we were programmed to think in terms of what do I want? What do I want for my flesh? We've built this narrative that we are the designers and we get to choose whatever we want. We get to choose the kind of car we want, the kind of job we want, and the kind of spouse we want. So it would stand to reason, Simon, that we want to choose our own designer God. People all the time say, I don't like your God idea. So I choose him. I don't choose, and you're free to do it. We're talking about the free will. You can choose that. But who are we to say, I don't like how God is doing it. I don't like how God does his reality. Like, fine. Say you don't like the sun. Say you don't, I've said this before. Half the country didn't like who the president was 2 years ago, and half the country doesn't like who the president is now. Doesn't change who the president is. Because you don't like the idea of God doesn't change who God would be. And I believe personally that in this simulated reality, a huge part of succeeding in this is having a heart for God and saying, I may not understand it, but I serve you. And I fear you. I know you can destroy me and give me wisdom. Like, I love what Atav and Wolf are both saying. These people fear God. They love God. They're exploring the nature of reality. They're exploring free will. But it's all with a heart to try and honor the King. I'm broken. God, please save me. And so, reading that comment again, what's the point if he knows who both groups are? Why watch this movie? You're literally going, it doesn't make sense to me. Why would God do this? What, is God strapped for resources? You said, why watch this movie? It's probably a really intriguing movie. We get into like these things where we get into all these little subplots and we know the characters and history or whatever. Boy, does he have a perspective of that. This is, what does it say in Scripture? That it is marvelous in his eyes. We don't understand it, but maybe it's specifically about love. Because what if this whole thing is just about that he loves us and that he wanted to know us, and as a big part of this, he wanted us to seek him and find him. But what's the point? Okay, that bores you. It didn't bore God. Why do this? Some amazing grand plan that we believe. I think, I don't want to speak for you guys, but if your heart is I don't understand it, but I love and I fear God, then hopefully you get to spend eternity with him as an elect, and you get to get the answers to these kind of things. And I believe that when he sits down and explains it to you, it'll all make sense.
I will absolutely build on that, and I'll say this. This process of going through this life is training for a time when we will have much more authority, much more free will. We are here today suffering what we have to suffer, enduring what we have to endure, putting up with idiots who make stupid arguments, ourselves making stupid arguments, and then having to learn the hard way that we were wrong. All of the things that we have to go through, our consciousness, our memory, our identity, all matter to an extreme, not because things are already determined, but because our memories and our love for God, our trust in him, despite us not understanding, is all going to pay off because these people don't understand what the afterlife is. They don't understand that we have an eternal role with God. When you take any of this stuff and you extend it to an eternity, I know that the human imagination can't even deal with that. But death is not the end. Death is the end of your opportunity to serve in this life and earn those rewards that we're promised. The millennial kingdom is a real thing. The idea that on this very physical planet Earth, Jesus will be reigning. We'll have 1,000 years to, it says we're going to be judging angels. We're going to be given a lot of authority. The training wheels will come off at some point. Just because we have come off at some point, just because we have limited free will now, however you want to phrase it, we don't have much autonomy. The Bible uses an analogy, which is that even a son is treated like a slave until he reaches maturity and he gets his inheritance, and at that point, he is treated like an adult and like a proper, like you would expect a son to be treated. But that was talking about the law and the law being a schoolmaster. But if you take it to the next level, it's about how this life, this age that we live in, the age of grace and the age of doubt, because we don't see it with our own eyes now. We have to go by faith. That is all leading up to a point where it'll be in our face. No one will be able to doubt. Now we're treated as sons, given real freedom. So I think free will is really what happens in the afterlife. And then all of our experiences, our testimony, our memories will all matter. I expect to probably be killed as a martyr in the next 10 to 20 years. Okay. Now, if that happens, and you have all these martyrs who have been killed brutally, unjustly, falsely accused, it says that those are the people, the beheaded ones, the martyrs, are going to be reigning with Jesus in the millennial kingdom. I argue in my book, maybe everyone is wrong, that the reason why the martyrs specifically are reigning with God is because, yeah, he's got a copy there. So the reason why they're chosen is because they're the ones who know what it means to be unjustly treated. They're the ones who know what injustice truly looks like. Jesus himself being the foremost example, the first example truly to be perfect and still have to go through it. We, being flawed and only redeemed through his blood, still are going to go through it to get a taste of it. But these arguments are all centered around the idea of this life being the end game and where it matters. It takes on a whole different perspective when you include the afterlife and the millennial kingdom.
Atav, can I add to that, or did you want to say something?
Oh no, you can keep going. I'm just listening.
So I love what you said about the martyrs. I had made a note about investing in the kingdom, so I'll get to that in a second. But you said, unjustly murdered, and maybe that would be one of the reasons. But what if it's like the ultimate checkpoint for you to go, this reality seems real, if it hurts, it feels really real, I want to live, I'm going to die now for who I believe God is, that's the end of this for me. I'm like, you talk about putting your money where your mouth is, and I just had this idea of like, you get your head cut off, and like immediately you're like, God's like, congratulations, you passed the test. Like it was an illusion. Like, yeah, that seemed real or whatever. Do you feel pain now? No, you did the right thing. Those who love their life unto death will lose it, right? There could be many things you could argue as far as why getting your head cut off for Christ and dying for what you believe, as the living God, and and dying in service to him, why that would be rewarded. But what if, like, in a very base level, it's like you wake up and it's like you pass the test. There was a joke, a comic book, little comic strip, and it was a guy looking at the do not eat silica gel thing that you find in like your pill bottles or whatever.
Right, yep.
And he like, have you seen that? And he looks at it and he goes, it says do not eat it, and he eats it. And like everybody's like, no, stop him. And he like eats it and he's like, I can't stop. And then like he ends up like waking up from simulation. They're like, you passed the test. Like nobody would eat it. It's
I haven't seen that, no.
But like, if what Jesus was talking about this being an illusory reality and temporary, and those that suffer here will, have more in heaven, and, those who don't love their life unto death will be rewarded. What if literally by dying, you qualify yourself as having gotten it, perceiving yourself past like this temporal reality and believing what the Creator said, what the Creator of the earth said, following the instructions, you followed the instructions. So like, I know there's multiple levels to that, but that idea, as you said, that really like hit home, like just imagining like, boom, lights off, lights on, and like, God being there and going, you did it. Like
I would go even one further, because I mean, this is all obviously it's part of a hypothesis, but the description of the first and second resurrection in Revelation is very, very interesting. There's a lot you can read into it. It says that the martyrs will be resurrected first. They will reign for 1,000 years with Jesus. And then it says that the rest of the dead did not come back to life until the 1,000 years had ended. Now, wow. What does the rest of the dead mean? That could mean literally billions of people.
The rest.
If that's the rest of everyone who's ever lived, if every single person who has ever lived gets a second chance at that point, after Jesus has already been reigning for 1,000 years, and we've established the kingdom on earth, a truly just world order, where we can do miracles. We have our resurrected bodies. Jesus is guiding world policy. We're deciding who lives and dies. I don't think it's all going to be mercy. It talks about him ruling with an iron rod. Because there's going to be people who just are alive at that time. The world doesn't fully end at the first resurrection. We're not alone with Jesus ruling the world. There's a remnant of other people there. But anyway, the world will continue on at that point. Everyone else comes back to life after the 1,000 years. That's the same point, at the same moment, where Satan is released from prison. For 1,000 years, he has been locked up. After the 1,000 years, he comes out at the same moment that everyone else comes back to life. And that is when Satan goes and raises up Gog and Magog to attack the camp of the saints, as it's called. Now, for me, that is one of the most fascinating things, because, again, those three angels that come and give these different messages, one of the messages is, blessed is anyone who, I'm paraphrasing, who dies for the gospel after this point. So imagine this: you get resurrected, not in the first resurrection, but in the second one, not with because only the first resurrection get the celestial body at that point. Everyone else who's resurrected in the second resurrection, you just have a human body, just a regular body. You can be killed. At that point, you will have to decide whether you're going to go along with the Gog and Magog invasion to try to go with Satan as the entire remnant of all of mankind trying to unite against God, or are you going to let them kill you by siding with Jesus at that point? And I think there's going to be a lot of people who called themselves Christians or thought that they were good people, and that given the choice, a hard choice between choosing God or dying, that I would choose God. Well, you'll have that chance yet in the second resurrection if you didn't make it in the first one. And this is where Jesus says that whoever loves his life shall lose it, and whoever hates his life in this world will gain it for eternity. There's other sayings like that too, where whoever loses his life for my sake, shall gain it. So I believe there's a time coming when people will, maybe everyone will eventually be put to the test. Are you going to give up your life for Jesus, or are you going to cop out and say, no, I want to live, and so I'm going to unite with Satan, and maybe if we all put ourselves together, we can overcome I know that's way out there. That's nobody's talked about that before. That's part of my theory. But when I connect the dots and I actually play it out in my mind, I imagine the scenario. That's very possible.
I love the idea. And, one thing that I think you talked earlier about how the sciences keep just getting closer and closer and closer to validating scripture, proving God, whether it's archaeologic finds, whether it's, the complicated nature of the things that we couldn't see, about how this reality is made up of things that, let's say, for by faith we understand that everything that is made by things that are not able to be seen. I'm paraphrasing a little bit.
Yeah,
but
that's basically that. Yep.
It's like happening now. It's like, oh yeah, it turns out everything's made by things we can't see. So like scripture is becoming more and more valid. Like you can trust the book. I say that a lot of time on the show. Like you can trust the book. Well, if Jesus says something that doesn't make sense to you, it's not wrong. You just don't understand it right now. This is the Son of God on the earth. This is the living Word made flesh. All of these things are so profound. So when he started saying, don't store up your treasures on earth, store up your treasures in heaven, that's very counterintuitive. But now we're finding out scientifically that being a materialist and swimming in debt and having this empty life because your reward is this physical thing that's degrading, Jesus was right. Like you hear these things all the time. And I just, what you're saying makes sense to me. Like Jesus's words are like going to be literally true, metaphorically true in some levels too. But I think that when we are in heaven, or as you become more aware of what he was saying, the more like literally what he was saying was accurate. As crazy as it sounded and as antithetical or counterintuitive to this reality, it is the truth. And so what I wanted to say is the kingdom. I was talking to one of my Discord members today. We were talking about investing in the kingdom and this idea of what you would get in heaven and passing the test. And imagine if, when Jesus was talking about this, storing up your treasures in heaven, imagine if literally the more that you gave into kingdom work, whatever you thought that was, you relinquished your money, you gave your money up, like you were actually literally investing in property in heaven. I don't want to get weird here, but like, what if money is an illusion? And Jesus was trying to say that. Don't worry about money. Don't worry about this. You can't serve two masters. The flowers of the field, the birds of the air, they don't worry about money. Don't worry about money. What if Jesus was saying that money is an illusion? Seems real. We give it quantitative value by exchanging it, whatever. And that if on this earth we set money aside, we gave money with that. What does Jesus say? Don't know what your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And we gave this money. And like now, just imagine this is the conversation that him and I were having. He supports us with Voice of Reasons, and we were talking about this idea. I was saying, thank you and God bless you, and only let if God guides you to support us, great. If he doesn't, then don't. We were talking about this idea, and I got this idea that, like, as ridiculous as it seems to give money now to someone you think is, trying to grow the kingdom, or even if you're just giving your money to a homeless person or whatever it is that God leads you, but like, what if like we die and you get to heaven and it's like, you look at your bank account and it's like, you have $0 in your bank account up here. You never gave any money. And like the other guy that was like giving this money, and then we were talking about compounding interest and like, this isn't because you don't want to give money to like get like a nice place in heaven, but it goes back to this idea of like, what if, taking the word seriously and doing what God said, like when with this illusory reality ends and we're in the real world, it's like, what did you do to actually prepare for that? And this idea of like donating to missionaries or whatever.
Yeah, I agree.
How cool would that be?
And again, this ties into the idea of free will. I want to tie it back to that because let's say that if you are one of the elect, and let's say that there is a limited list of people who are elect, what if among the elect, there's still free choice as to, you take accountability for what you did after that point. So we can have degrees of, just like I said, the training wheels might come off in the afterlife, especially new creation, where we're not talking about heaven anymore. We're talking about a new planet that is going to last forever. That's one of the things I'm big on is reminding people that the Bible does not describe heaven as being the eternal endpoint. Heaven is the waiting room while we wait for new creation. or the millennial kingdom, depending, like, you know, those who go to the millennial kingdom will be waiting for that. And so, but anyway, the idea of these training wheels coming off in succession, being saved and being justified might be the beginning of that, where your free will, because that one guy is still, you know, he asked what the point would be. The reason why I do what I do is 100% selfish. I'm a very, very selfish person, but this life is not where I want my rewards. I am only concerned with the next life and the rewards that I can get there. God has put down the rules. I want to exploit the rules that he gave me to get the rewards in the next life. And I do that by being selfless here. I do that by being a good person here to the extent that I can, and by humbling myself here to God and God's plan. And like I said, I think I'm probably going to I don't think I'm going to be alive in 10 years or 15 years. I couldn't care less about money here and now. And I don't care about having grandkids and people want, my cholesterol levels. I don't give a shit about any of it.
That's my boy. Love
because this life is an opportunity God is giving me every day to do something for his kingdom, and to do something for his kingdom. And is that because I know some Christians, and I oppose this idea, Christians who say, you know, I forgive, they almost want to make it sound like they're doing it because they deserve to be treated badly, and they have such a low opinion of themselves. They think that humility means that you have to think of yourself as being a bad person that deserves to be treated like crap from everyone. No, Jesus was the example. Perfect. I mean, not that we're all very flawed. He was the one that was actually perfect, and he forgave people even. And then what happened to him? He became literally the ruler of the whole universe. Wow. So if we get one taste of that when we are redeemed, we have his spirit in us, we can actually do some good. We forgive people. The Bible says to forgive people so that you lump coals of fire on their head. That's why you're supposed to forgive people.
Right. That's
you're supposed
kind of a selfish thing.
Yeah, it's the best revenge is to be a Christian who submits to false accusations and slander and ends up being murdered in a show trial where they kill you and take everything and devastate your family and things like that. The Martyrs, I love the book, The Martyr's Mirror. It's my favorite, basically my favorite book besides the Bible. Actually, it is easily. I don't know why I said basically, but yeah, The Martyr's Mirror is literally just a compilation of record of all these martyrs who sang songs while they were being burned alive.
God.
And it's inhuman. It is only the Holy Spirit that could be doing that in them. And I think those are people who made the choice. They passed. You want to talk about passing the test. They passed the test. Those people's rewards, they're going for the high score multiplier in the video game. I want to join those guys if I can. And it's the selfish thing in me that I want to try. Literally, my goal is to try to piss off Satan's plans and his conspiracy so much that they have to kill me. And then I get to join those martyrs and enjoy the rewards. And then right there, I just think of the Bible saying that Jesus will spit out the lukewarm. How dare you be lukewarm if you're saved and you're not passionately trying to disrupt the satanic conspiracy and get something going in this life for your own sake, for the good of the kingdom, obviously all the altruistic reasons as well, but
Amen.
Ultimately it comes back to you, and you're allowed to want that. You're allowed to want the rewards in heaven, and I think that should be the motivation. So when we talk about what the point is in having free will, I don't care if I have free will or not. I'm going as hard as I can until they kill me, and if I find out later that I didn't have any free will, I'll just laugh. What do I care?
what I do, it seems like I have free will, so I may as well do it.
Oh yeah, someone in the comments, by the way, someone in the comments told you to make an OnlyFans then in response to your statement.
I do
And
have an OnlyFans.
I was like, yeah, you actually have one.
I have no content on it, but I made one just in case.
Just in case, bro. That was an all-world diatribe. I appreciate that. That was entertaining and profound. So what a good combination. The whole idea of like trying to unlock the achievement of pissing them off so much they're forced to kill you as a conspiracy theorist, like representing Christ. I was kind of thinking the other way. Like, how do I like be really upsetting and not get killed? But wow, I love the idea. That's a good achievement unlocking. And the whole lukewarm thing, I just gotta tell you, like this really funny thing that God did with my name being Luke in the simulation. Like, I don't know how much of that's my fault or what, because he's like literally talking about me. But I'm trying not to be lukewarm anymore. Like I was lukewarm for many a decade. But I agree. Like we've seen these things happen in the last couple years. We're not in Kansas anymore. I don't know if Canadians still that reference. But we've crossed the Rubicon into this bizarro world where like the end is potentially happening. You've seen probably some of WOLFPOX's info on climate change. We've all watched what happened with the World Economic Forum in Canada and this Russia-Ukraine thing and COVID, and like it's not like it was. The life that we knew has changed so much. And as this becomes more real and the book unfolds, I do agree with him. Like, we have to just put the old world and the way we knew things aside and really focus on the kingdom, focus on God. And so, maybe you're not called to get on TikTok. You're introverted or maybe you're not skilled in content creation or whatever, but can you support somebody that is? Do you have something in your family, in your life? I do believe that everybody has a sphere of influence that they're responsible for. You can very much imagine that scenario where, the X person isn't there with you in heaven, and you're like you don't want to have that discussion. It's like you were supposed to talk to him and you didn't because of what? You were afraid they didn't think you were cool or something. Like, you have to talk to these people. You have to be sensitive. Like, and for me, it's like, just try to calibrate your heart with God. Try to get your heart right and listen to what he's telling you, because he's probably telling you something. But anyways, I mean, we know a lot of that. That's kind of standard Christian information. But I love what you said there, Wolf.
And I just want to reiterate that on all of this, what I'm trying to say is that you should act. What I'm trying to say is that you should act as if you have 100% free will. You are in the driver's seat. You are accountable. You are responsible. You were recruited into an army, and your job is to accomplish the mission. If you don't have that in you, if you say, well, there's predestination, so I'll just sit back and find out what God had in store for me, you're a fool. You need to repent right now, and you need to realize that the warnings they're for the elect. Obviously, Jesus said, those who have ears to hear, let them hear what they say. Does everyone have ears to hear? No. If you're one of the few who has ears to hear, if God allows you to hear the message, how dare you ignore that and sit on the sidelines and think that you're not essential to the plan? You have to act as if you have not only free will, but the power to impact things, and then find out the hard way what the limits are. Find out how far you can go. That's my entire thing. Is I wrote a book called Maybe Everyone is Wrong, which is inflammatory. The first chapter is dedicated to me saying how not an expert I am. I don't have any qualifications to be talking about what I'm doing, but I'm going to go do it anyway. And then I made a TikTok account just to explain the ideas and give the information away for free. And it's like, I was just literally saying to God, I'm going to test how far I can push this. How far can I push the interpretation? How far can I push myself to promote it? How far can I do any of this? Now I'm here talking with you guys. guys that I love, powerful voices. Meanwhile, I'm getting invited on other podcasts and stuff like that. The events are unfolding. Why? Because I finally got off my ass and decided to take accountability. It's actually the belief that God has a plan for me, and I want to lean into it. I want to run with it instead of against it or sitting still and waiting for him to drag me through it. I want to participate in it with as much effort as I can, intelligently, carefully, not just randomly or anything like that, doing the hard work, the research, everything. And so this is maybe it's a paradox, maybe it's a contradiction, and I just don't appreciate it. But if to the extent that God has a plan for me, I'm not going to stand by and wait to see what it is. I think that's what walking in faith means. It means you still have to walk. You still have to take steps. But what is the faith? The faith is that he will direct those steps to what he wants you to be doing. So it's running with the plan as opposed to trying to resist it or question it or make it, lean more towards your own personal success. Give up on that. Be very clear in your mind that you're going to die. You're probably going to die badly. The more effective you are for the gospel, the worse your death is probably going to be. And don't try to have the comfortable life. It says, for everything you suffer, you will receive a blessing. I literally think of it as a high score multiplier. There's a scoreboard in heaven. Jesus is the all-time number one. No one will ever get close.
Yeah, no, he flipped the board. Yeah, he flipped
Paul
the
is
board.
probably number 2 or something like that. But all the shipwrecks and stuff he had to go through. But it's like, try to push it, and it's okay to be selfish about it. Don't let the haters slow you down. That's why I don't partake in debates. I don't care about debates. Go to where the action is and try to make a difference in whatever way you can. And like you said, that might be something as simple as changing the way you talk around your brothers or sisters or your own family members. Maybe you just do some small change and they realize that there's something different about you. The word holy literally means being separated, and separated for a purpose. And it's like, to be holy, you don't have to accomplish anything. You literally just have to be different than other people. And so try to be holy, wherever that leads. Again, God is the one that is going to reveal his plan in time. But for practical reasons, you should be acting like every day is your last, and you have a very high calling that you have to live up to, and then rely on God to turn the results the way he needs to. I got banned off of TikTok, as you know, from having 200 some thousand followers. Guess what? I did not, even for a minute, pity myself or say, God, why did you do that? I was doing such good things for you. What about, hey, I could have really monetized that. That could have been really good for me, whatever. I said, okay, that's over for some reason. I don't know why God would allow that to happen. Let me write a new book right now. Let me just shift right to something else. And it was extreme. He's got the second book too. Fire in the Rabbit Hole is the second book that I wrote based on, I got banned. I said, okay, what did I learn in this last year when I was just going on TikTok as hard as I can? I'm going to condense all of that into a book and then, come back. And now I'm coming back and I'm getting followers back and it's wonderful. But it's like, I don't stop and ask, well, what that was a bad thing that happened that I got banned. No, it's not bad. It's when God is the one that's in control, it's not bad. It's the same thing when to give it a little backstory to maybe everyone is wrong. I wrote that book. This is actually embarrassing to say. So I wrote 2 books before any of my Christian books.
Both of them were about video games. Both of them were about the Metal Gear Solid series and Hideo Kojima. And I was basically writing a biography for that. I've had a Metal Gear website since 2008. I was very into video game culture and commenting on that. It's still up if people want to go to metagearsolid.org. It's still a website. But anyway, so I was totally trying to just be this like. But anyway, so I was totally trying to just be this like author in that way. I was trying to be a Metal Gear and video game author. And then it was the New York Times interviewed me. They didn't end up using the material for the interview, but the New York Times did a 6-hour interview broken into 3 parts with me related to my views on Hideo Kojima and the video game world. And I'm like, I'm making it. You know, this is my year. 2020 is going to be the year where I blow up and everyone's going to know me as the Metal Gear guy. And as it turns out, COVID happens, lockdowns happen. The podcast that I was on, this big Metal Gear podcast, they got the idea pretty early on that I was questioning the narrative. So they not only blacklisted me off their podcast, they deleted all of the episodes that I was on. I was one of the first people canceled from questioning the COVID narrative. New York Times didn't end up using any of the interview. I had 6 hours of talking with this stupid New York Times reporter who didn't know anything and was disrespectful and all these things. Didn't end up turning into anything. On top of that, in the middle of the COVID shutdown, my basement flooded off of a freak storm and a construction incident and all these things at once. So my basement was ruined and, you know, set me back. I was panicked over that. It felt like everything was falling apart in my life. And it was like, oh, my books on Metal Gear aren't going to be the thing, I guess. I had to learn that the hard way. God slapped me a couple times like, no, you're not supposed to be famous off of writing about Hideo Kojima in the Metal Gear series. That's what actually made me decide I give up. I give up on trying to do it my way. That's what I wanted to be famous for. Let me just now write about the Bible, write about God's things, shift my focus to God's message and interpretation in these crazy times as I saw what COVID represented. And it's like, that's actually what caused me to write Maybe Everyone is Wrong. It was a series of huge failures where my entire plan for what I wanted for my life fell apart. So again, is that my free will? You know, my free will was leading in this other direction. Of course, I still wanted to promote God in the meantime. It's kind of a side thing. I was going to make sure that people knew I was a Christian, but I wasn't going to go hardcore into studying Revelation or anything like that until I didn't have the choice anymore. Those avenues were cut off to me. And again, just like being banned off TikTok, I write another book. I just keep seeing it as I do have free will. I'm stupid and my own will sucks and I wish I didn't have it. But when I go the opposite way and I go with God instead of against him, that's when good things actually happen. And I feel like it's all been completely God's script that I had to go through to learn those lessons.
So I said earlier that, you know, the manipulation of free will may be specific to God's grace and mercy, that he makes the exception, you know, not that we've answered this or even like fully, I don't know if I've been able to reconcile my stance on it, but I like the free will with training wheels idea, but maybe these times where he manipulates the space-time continuum, manipulates the matter, you know, manipulates the result, has to do with his grace, and like with what you're talking about, you wouldn't have, your will sucks, your idea sucked, but you, in your heart, you did want to serve God, even if it's selfishly that you're storing up your treasure in heaven and so you trusted God. And so maybe, you know, maybe he was able to kind of manipulate that free will a little bit more because of how you've made good on it. So
right.
I love that God called you, and, you know, I was same thing, doing my will sucks, doing my own stupid things a couple years ago. And I've said this to a few people. I feel like, you know, when Jesus went to the Jews and they rejected him, he went to the secular world. And I feel like with what's going on in the world, the church, the religious system, had an opportunity, and it's almost like God has removed that because they screwed up. They rejected or denied because their will sucked. They didn't make good on it, and so now he's like going to, because their will sucked. They didn't make good on it, and so now he's like going to us. It's like the people that are like just organic people living. So go. Those are and. So that's what I was saying earlier. Like, if you feel like God is calling you and you feel like you have a ministry or you feel like you have something you've got to do, it's time to start acting on it. I really appreciate that you're telling the story, Wolf, that you were just a guy a couple years ago not intending to do this, and now look at what's happening and God is blessing it. Please, people, take God seriously right now. I left a really comfortable job that was killing me, by the way, ironically, and I probably wouldn't have left it if it wasn't killing me because my will sucks. But, if God's calling you to do something, it might not be write a book. It might be write a book. It might not be start a TikTok. It might be. But get in service, right? Like, try to get in service.
And this is the idea of submitting to his will. Is this paradox right in the heart of the New Testament? I thought I was submitting to his will, but in retrospect, it was such a tiny little bit that I was doing that. I was on the fence, and I wasn't really putting my name at risk, like writing the book that I did, doing the TikTok. All of that could get me censored. It could get me fired, maybe. It could, I don't know what were the bad things that could all happen, but it was literally at the point of saying, okay, once I said I give up is actually where it felt like I got momentum. And this is this paradox of course I gave up on one thing, but then I embraced another thing. And so, to let go of my former self-image and my idea there and take the chance, walking in faith, like I said, the walk is still important. It's not just faith without walking, it's walking in faith and taking steps. God wants your experience and your insight and your childhood and your crappy background that you came from to inform your next move. It's there to make you more intelligent for the next move you make.
Wow.
And people who escape from terrible cultures or families or jobs or whatever, you become that much more effective at helping the other person who is in that same situation. Everything is very meaningful. It's not that predestination cancels the meaning. It doesn't cancel your choices. It informs your choices so that the next choice you make can be better, more powerful, and you can ultimately your testimony is going. You notice how much the Bible emphasizes your testimony, that especially on Judgment Day, every man is going to give account for himself. There will be a time where you have to actually explain how and what you did for the kingdom. And if your explanation is, well, I just thought you were going to do something in my life, God. I thought you were, I believed in predestination and therefore I didn't do anything. Just think about how that sounds, as opposed to the person who says, God, the future is mysterious. It's known only to God, and I'm going to do what I can, but I'm still going to give him all of the credit for everything good that happens. That is basically my policy: is everything good that happens, I give credit to God. Everything bad that happens, I'll take that. I'll take the credit for the terrible things that I do and the failures. And everything that's good, he gets 100% of the credit, because the Bible even says that our spirit is making intercession for us, in a way that we can't even articulate or know. It reaches out and does things without us even knowing. So when you have the Spirit, again, it's a submission to his will. It is a mystery that is happening within us and around us. And you can't just look at it as materialist, but you also can't look at it as that you don't have that your experiences, your background, your insight, your knowledge, your skills don't matter as well. And so you have to have this balance of a rational thought process and a rational plan, but you have to submit that plan constantly to him and be adaptable, I guess.
I was gonna say, well, Atav, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was thinking, Wolf, depending on where you're at, maybe we do a few minutes of question and answer, and then try and wrap up. It's pretty late. It's 12:30.
Yep, I'm an all-nighter, but we could absolutely do that. I'd love to hear some questions and answers.
Okay, so the first one, go ahead and ask your question, guys. We'll try to get to it. Guy had asked a couple times about the Second Amendment. We have to be careful because of TikTok, unfortunately. I guess with what Wolf said, I'm all fired up. Let's go. I'll just say whatever I want to. No, but you got me all fired up. I've been like watching everything I say for so long now. But I would say that the way it was written was to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government, and that's a great rule to have because absolute power corrupts absolutely, and if you don't have a way to fight back, yeah. So the other part of that is, if everybody had a gun, and this gun control can be weird, but if everybody had a gun, you wouldn't have the bad guys, shooting fish in a barrel like we saw at the subway. Like if he knew when he opened up fire that there was 20 guns going to be turned on him, he wouldn't have made it very far. So making things illegal doesn't make it go away. It just usually puts that power in the person's hands that are willing to break the law. So ideally there would be no guns. Wouldn't that be amazing? We could just all fight everything out. That'd be great. But there are guns, so probably everybody should be able to have them even for checks and balances. That's kind of my thought.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Doesn't the Second Amendment specifically mention militias, the idea of the well-regulated militia, or is that a separate
I think that's separate. It's just the right to bear arms. I'll define it. I should know that because
I'm not as familiar with the American Bill of Rights and stuff as Americans are, I'm sure. So if it's simply that the government will not infringe on a person's right to bear arms or something, I would need to have a refresher on that. Canadians.
You might be right about that. So what do you guys what is the gun rules up there? I thought that you weren't so much able to have them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't have the guarantees of the right to have guns. It's a privilege that we have. It's so far not very never became a big issue. There's not a the government has tried to restrict certain gun types over and over again. Pistols especially are very restricted here. Long range rifles and long rifles and stuff is more permissible. Shotguns, stuff like that. Big hunting culture in Canada because we have such huge nature and we actually have to hunt animals in order to keep certain populations down and all these types of things and predators and different things that are getting out of control. So I don't think a Christian should ever even contemplate using a gun, even in self-defense. I'm extreme pacifist, extreme non-defensive, turn the other cheek, let them do whatever they're going to do. I know that some people, when they have families, that's where it really becomes extreme, and you have to ask yourself whether you're going to let your family be violated for the sake of non-defensiveness, trying to comport with the Christian attitude, their family. And so militarily, yes, the Constitution was there to protect against tyranny. Had you looked up that thing? I'm curious what it actually says.
Oh, yeah. You nailed it. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Right. See, that's what I remember when I looked it up, was that actually what the Second Amendment conversation should be is we need to have strong regulated militias in every single state capable of fighting the federal government and other states if they go rogue or whatever. And the militia should be a central part of American life, actually. The fact that that's turned by the wayside and people only talk about, I can own my own personal set of guns, is why it's a joke to me, is that nobody's trying to organize militias except for the FBI, double agents that are trying to set up fake ones to get people to look crazy.
Like Timothy McVeigh, for example.
Yeah.
Remember that from the Oklahoma City bombing? So I mean, it kind of. I love that you mentioned what a Christian should do. You know, it becomes kind of a philosophic thing. Are you gonna fight back? You know, people always talk to me. They say, you know, what do we do? We got to, you know, everything's we've got the bad guys are in charge. The satanic elite are doing this thing. You know, do we got to get a revolution going? And my interpretation of Scripture is that we're not at all instructed to do that.
No.
I never read a single line that said if the saints get together and organize a militia, they'll stop the mark of the beast. I haven't seen that line. And so the dying, you know, on your knees, you know, for your Father, for your Lord, for Jesus. This is what I think is the retirement plan. But I'm all for, personally, for the freedom to be able to do it, and I'm pretty contrarian in this manner. But I don't think basically hardly anything should be illegal, because again, it doesn't make it. I was in Colorado, and you know, they made weed legal, and I'm not a weed guy, but it just helped the economy. Why? Because before it was legal, the people that were just willing to break the law were the ones selling it. When they made it legal, it's like, you know, everybody has a shot. So I just don't think that making, like, I'm for getting rid of as many of the laws, which are basically, I think, in my opinion, excuses for the police to make money and the judges to make money and keep, you know, corruption going. You look at prohibition, didn't make drinking go away. It just made the Kennedys and a bunch of other people really rich. So I'm for freedom for those kind of things. But I agree with Wolf. Like, I don't feel led to, like, I'm going to go down and take as many with me on the way down. I don't think that's what Jesus said to do.
I'll go as far as saying that I don't think that I don't care about any policies. I don't care what any policies are about anything. Literally, Christians have survived since the time of Christ through every kind of disaster, every kind of oppression, kings, monarchs, empires, you know, Ottoman, Muslim occupation, Chinese currently, tyranny, communism, whatever it is. The policies change in this world, but our allegiance is still the same. Our laws are dictated by the Bible, by the Holy Spirit. And you know, my policy is let the world be the world. The world is going to keep being the world. You're not going to fix it. You're not going to. I mean, I do believe that the amount of guns in America and the gun rights is what's holding back all sorts of tyranny. So, if I cared about society being improved or saved, I would be a big gun rights advocate. The only thing is, I don't think that slowing down the march to tyranny is the calling of Christianity. It's the spiritual warfare. The Bible specifically says the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, they are not physical, they are spiritual, by pulling down strongholds of imaginations against God, or whatever the phrasing is exactly, that everything that attacks God's message that's the war that we're actually supposed to be fighting. I don't condemn soldiers if they want to join the military. I'm not the judge of anyone. If somebody does end up defending themselves, killing someone, if I'm ever put in that situation and out of my survival instinct, I do end up killing somebody, I would think I could maybe get forgiven for that. But that's very different than having the militaristic attitude of, no, here's my gun collection. I'm going to train. Someday I'm going to make use of this gun to save myself and take down the state and all that stuff. So it's a mind shift. And I just find the Second Amendment very funny because of the fact that it heavily emphasizes the well-regulated militia, and everyone's just given up on that.
So a couple persons are mentioning David, that he was a soldier, and, you know, the zealots at Jesus' time were really fired up in this kind of militant, you know, we're going to free Rome, or we're going to free the Israel from Rome. And, you know, a lot of them are looking at Messiah as this conquering military figure, political figure. And Jesus was like, it's not what I'm like. Look, we've shed the blood. We've upset the kingdoms. Like, it's a vacuum. You cut off the snake of the Hydra and another snake appears. You know, you upset this one governmental system, and it regrows, because Satan is kind of in the background running the show, and he is outside of time and space, and so he can always be. People are very engineerable, very predictable. He knew your parents, he knew your grandparents, he knows the buttons to pull, he knows who he's going to pull in and recruit, and he promises the same thing, power, the same thing he promised Jesus. Work for me and I will make you head of this whole, world system, whatever. So until the devil's gone, you go and you wipe out everybody evil, a new one's going to reappear. And so then you just find out life's temporal, and what's the point? Like Jesus, if Jesus would have in his ministry beat Rome, there would have been another thing coming up at one point. I mean, Jesus maybe isn't a good example because he was going to reign perfectly, but it doesn't end. And like what Jesus did was bigger than Rome at the time. And look, Rome collapsed. Israel was sent out of there. They're back in there. The temporary kingdom doesn't matter. Winning the football game doesn't matter. Winning this war doesn't matter. It's about, eternity, and it's about, like, I love what you said earlier, Wolf, about dying in the way where hopefully God is impressed. And, the David conquering thing, yes, that was a time. There was a season that happened. And when Jesus came and implemented the new rules, it was different. It wasn't about how many people you can take out and winning this political thing. It was about dying, not living your life on the death. And like when Jesus at the Beatitudes said, turn the other cheek, and all of these different things he told us to do, he ended up doing that exactly when he went up against the Sanhedrin, when he went up against and had the court case. He did everything he said that we should do. He turned the other cheek. He didn't fight with them about the outcome. He willingly gave up his life. And there's two different ways. It's like go down fighting, kill as many as you can, or just realize that this is temporary reality and try and not.
I have to.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just have to respond to this comment that said, it's quoting, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy one. Nobody reads the context of that verse. That's literally saying, so that you will be counted among the transgressors. That's right leading up to the point where Jesus is saying that to fulfill prophecy, Jesus and his followers have to be counted as enemies of the state. That's why they had to go and buy swords. Notice that none of them used those swords, but all of them were afraid when Jesus got captured because they had swords, and because he was being accused of being a transgressor against the state, they were now culpable as accomplices. So even that verse in context, it's about make sure that you fulfill this prophecy where they falsely accuse you of being challenging the state with military weapons, and none of them actually ended up using it. We have no evidence that any of them actually killed anyone or defended Jesus with physical force and stuff like that. And there's something else I was going to say too, based on one of these comments.
We even had Jesus put the ear back on. He said, "Put your arm down and fix the guy's ear." So, I was going to say that when he was talking to Pontius Pilate, he said that my kingdom is not of this world, and that if it was of this world, my servants would fight for me, that I wouldn't be handed over to the Romans. Or handed over to the Jews. I don't know which one he said, but so he specifically disowns the idea that his soldiers do things to protect him in this life, or that they're going to physically establish a threat to the Roman Empire. He says it's from heaven. My kingdom is not of this world, and he even says what would happen if it was. So people who want to fight the good fight, the Catholic idea of conquering and the Crusades and all these things, it's just proof that they're not actually Christian. They're not going along with Jesus's style of spiritual warfare. This guy asks, how can you prove the giants? He asked it twice, so I know that means they're serious if they ask it multiple times. So I have no idea, Wolf, what your take is, but I would say number one, we don't have to prove it. The question is, how can you prove the giants are real? We believe in Scripture. I don't even know where you're at with the Nephilim idea. I believe obviously that Goliath was a real figure. As far as a lot of the evidence, a lot of it I think would have been destroyed in the flood. And then the beautiful people at the Smithsonian that basically control the narrative. We talked earlier about controlling the narrative of our history. You got to understand, you got Disney, NASA controlling the narrative of what space is, when we got here, how we got here, whatever. We have the Smithsonian and National Geographic and all of these kind of natural sciences controlling the narrative of our history. A lot of it's been obfuscated. I understand that they were doing a lot of collecting of, those kind of artifacts, Snake Mound and all the different places where they knew there was giants, reported that red-headed giants and whatever. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of evidence. It seems like a lot of it's been hidden. I don't feel like I have to prove the giants. I believe that that's my interpretation about what the Nephilim were. And I think that there's been evidence, including there's Robert Wadlow, potentially that's a recessive giant gene. And there is some really interesting archaeologic evidence, cone-shaped heads, things like that. Not to get too X-Files-y, but I think there is evidence, but I think a lot of it's been hidden, and I don't think I have to prove it particularly, but I think there is evidence supporting it. What do you think, Wolf?
Yeah, I take it the Bible's account of giants at face value, that there were giants. All these other cultures had mythologies about giants. There's such a unity of the different mythologies agreeing on it. The fact that people can't seem to find evidence, or the evidence there is disputed, like you said, it gets covered up. So yeah, I basically agree completely. I also don't care. I don't know why other people would particularly care. It's one of those historical, of course, anything that proves, the accuracy of the Bible is great. But one of the reasons why I don't, I just don't focus on it is because the applicability of it is limited. But when I do see people finding evidence of giants, I'm like, okay, well, that would make sense. And here's all these other myths and cultures that attested to the same thing. And then they usually seem to be associated with religious major religious events that roughly line up with the flood and the idea of gods being involved. Of course, if you understand fallen angels as being these false gods and stuff, I think there's a very convincing argument just from that point of view that these things were real and the flood narrative, all these things tying together. And
the guy says all I'm hearing is excuses. To be clear, I think Wolf and ATAB would back me up on this. I don't feel, and I'm consistent in my channel, I give the evidence in favor of it, but I don't feel like I have to prove the Bible. I don't believe in the Bible because it's 100% proof. I've said a lot of times it's like 51-49. Reality looks like it's designed. I believe the author is scripture. People believe that's not the case. People believe it's other things. I've never said on this channel, I will prove to you God Israel. I'll give you evidence in support of it. But to me, it's about a hard issue. And, I have a lot of discussions with atheists and Satanists, and people are just going to refuse God unto death. And that's the free will, back to the free will decision. You have that. So as far as something that does complicate this, though, a complicating variable is we are under a information monopoly.
yeah.
Brought to you by this coordinated effort that's been shown now, especially after what happened with COVID. You have to know that there's a coordinated effort to obfuscate, interpret, slant the information, and it's media, it's government, it's history, it's academia. It's this. Yeah. It's this thing. So
imagine 600 fact checkers trying to go through the Bible. It's like the blue check marks are going to decide what we believe about our faith. Brilliant. And it's like truth is not controlled by the authorities. Truth is not controlled by the consensus of the bureaucrats and the experts and the information monopoly, like you said. So if you're still going along with that crap, you're so far behind. And then the counter danger is, of course, to jump on board with any random rabbit hole, which is literally what the basis of my book, Fire in the Rabbit Hole, is based on, is the idea that right now, as faith in the media and in establishment authority on truth is collapsing and vanishing, it's being replaced by the worst kind of rabbit holes that lead to New Ageism and all these other things. So I think that's what
it's almost like it's planned.
Yep. They're trying to discredit the authority figures so quickly and replace it with guys like Joe Rogan, guys that
will criticize the establishment and point out all the reasons why they're lying, but then he'll slip in that new age, propaganda and make it sound like that's the Enlightenment, that's the alternative. So
a couple things to that. This is crazy, and it's fine. I know not everybody's going to agree with this idea, but there's nobody attacked in today's world, I don't believe anyways, like the person of Jesus Christ, followers of Jesus Christ. Nobody's like ripping apart Islam. Nobody's ripping apart atheism. Nobody's ripping apart all these things. It's like a specific concerted effort by basically the same group that I was talking about with this information monopoly to disparage the idea of Jesus. He's exclusive. When he's as inclusive as you could possibly be. Literally, when he came to the earth, he went to the enemies of the Jews, the Samaritans. He went to everybody. He loved everybody. He healed everybody. All you have to do is drink from the water. There's an absolute open ticket to everybody, but what? He's exclusive. You've got this narrative that you can't trust the system, like you're saying, but the real big people in it are the ones that say, yes, you can't trust the system, and you also can't trust Jesus. Those are the people with the platforms right now. And I would say that, like, as ridiculous as this sounds, the devil doesn't care if you believe in a God. The devil doesn't care if you believe in a simulated reality. Those are all fine. The main focus is to get you to not believe in specifically God of the Bible and Jesus. And so you have like this information monopoly thing. And as we talked about, like COVID and all the other things that's gone on, what has been lumped in with this, right? There was the whole January 6th event. And there was the whole Christians equal Donald Trump equal bad. Christians are bad.
Yep.
They're anti-science. They're,
white nationalism.
The white nationalists, you can't, and meanwhile, we got the Azov battalion in the Ukraine, that's a whole other conversation, but so you've got this idea that Christians are the enemy, and they are the enemy of the system, and why? If the Christians are the enemy of the system, who's running the system?
Yeah, it's controlled opposition, and the people who are allowed to question the narrative right now, all these red flags coming up, they all seem to be saying the same thing from different points of view. And you can tell when they get rebuked, when they cross a line that they weren't supposed to, and they give too much credence to Christianity or something, they suddenly get mocked by all of their peers, and that's suddenly crossing some sort of line. That's a taboo thing. So yeah, I absolutely, the idea of trusting the establishment media, let's say that's something like Giants, would be foolish. It would also be foolish to just jump on the alternative. I really think it's exactly true. Biblical-based Christians are being squeezed into and falsely associated with everything bad under the sun, so that
everything bad. Anti-science, climate change, right? Science deniers. I know you're big on climate change and what that's potentially coming. Just with the whole election thing and like, oh, you don't trust the government. Like there's that. Like it's you don't trust science with the age of the universe. You don't trust science with this. Like it's in so many ways, Christians, like of all of the narratives that are coming in there, Christianity seems to be the common denominator.
Because we're the threat. We are the actual threat to the satanic conspiracy. We're the actual threat to their monopoly on information. People gravitate very strongly to the actual gospel. When you say it right, people actually do. It's powerful, and it hits people on a level that they're not ready for. They're ready for some sort of intellectual debate, and you cut to it with the real gospel, and it cuts through all of the bullshit. And suddenly they might not admit it to your face, but they go home and they feel different. And they're so threatened by the spread of real evangelism and real biblical truth that, yes, they're turning the entire world upside down to make it sound like we're the enemy instead of the solution. And so the solution becomes to get rid of us. Right. And that's coming soon.
Meanwhile, Christians that are actual followers of Christ are an absolute benefit and boon to your community. Like if you're being a Christian the right way, you want Christians. If you're a manager of your of whatever, doesn't matter what it is, and you can get a Christian there, and the Christian's the right kind of Christian, they're self-governed, they're charitable, they're giving, they'll give you the shirt off their back, they'll buy your meal. They'll like a good Christian is like not the enemy. Like we live in this upside down reality where Christians are the problem, but there's also Christians that really misrepresent God and act like the world. You mentioned earlier, Jesus saying that he's not impressed with some people. There's a lot of people who aren't really Christians. They just say Jesus a lot, and those people can make Christians look bad as well. But I don't remember how we started talking about that. Something about the giants.
Giants and trusting authority figures, basically.
Right. If you look at, I'm an apologist. You said Christian Scientist. I've been researching intelligent design, and the concerted effort to squash and marginalize people who believe in intelligent design is unbelievable. I had an atheist on here the other day, and we were talking about the scientific method, and we were talking about Isaac Newton, and he was so convinced of his worldview that science had disproven the Bible and God, and had proven that there is no God, which is obviously the heights of ignorance, in my opinion. He said that Isaac Newton, I said, well, you can be a really good scientist and be a Christian. He's like, and I said, like Isaac Newton. And he said, oh yeah, but if Isaac Newton was alive today, he would have been an atheist. And I was like, are you serious? Back then, when they didn't know about DNA and they didn't know about the Big Bang and they didn't know about quantum physics, he believed. You think there's enough evidence today, right now, that if Newton was alive, he would have to deny God the creator? Wow, that's bias. Like, this is a concerted effort to obfuscate the truth of God. And it's a big thing that I'm doing with this channel, the truth of God. And it's a big thing that I'm doing with this channel. Like, cool, you don't want to believe in God. That's fine. You don't have to believe in God. And surprisingly, the evidence in God, absolutely. But for science to think that they've disproven God, it shows the control of information. So back to the giants thing. Research the Smithsonian, research them collecting giant bones. This is like almost in the Lewis and Clark days. Like, this is like, 19th century, maybe even a little bit earlier. They were going around and collecting these things. There's people that have them in private collections. They keep finding relics, archaeological relics, proving this David guy existed. I think they found like maybe some armor or something from giants in Israel, like around the Og of Bashan time. Anyways, there's some information out there, but a lot of it, I would love if the world's private collection, we talked about these elite satanic controllers or whatever, I have this hunch that they've got science, they've got evidence that would back the Bible in spades, that they have like hidden in their secret collection.
Absolutely.
So somebody just
it's suppressed.
Somebody just released like something about the Tower of Babel, and it was like a stone done by one of the kings of Babel, and it talked about the ziggurat and how it was built with the pitch and the whole thing. And it was like in somebody's private collection. He died, and they were like, "Yeah, you can have it." Like, there's a lot of that information probably out there. So that's my answer to the giants thing. Did you see any other questions, you guys?
I saw one about UFOs. People. I think people are just picking all the different controversies and want to comment on it. But
well, what do you think? I mean, my take on UFOs is that if there is such a thing, they're not. They're interdimensional. Basically, they're demons, would be my guess. Instead of extraterrestrial, they're interdimensional. That would be my take, is it's just the modernizing of the demon story.
Yeah, I don't, I still have, I'm a skeptical person by nature, so I've never been convinced that people went to the moon. I've never been convinced that anybody has attained the technology to be able to do any of these things. And so to the extent that those are real craft, they seem to defy all physics. There's an argument, I think, actually, you're familiar with Michael S. Heiser, I'm guessing.
Yeah, Mike Heiser, yeah, for sure.
He's unfortunately, he's suffering from really severe cancer. We should all be praying for him. But he actually has a science fiction series most people are not aware of, called The Facade and the Portent. And the entire books are about UFOs and aliens, and about how they're being used, how they could be used. I'm guessing it's a very thin commentary, thinly disguised commentary on what he actually believes. It's displayed as fiction, but and he basically suggests that demonic technology, basically the government has technology that is created through demonic insight and reverse engineering things, that they're preparing for a disclosure of UFO reality that is meant to discredit Christianity, and that it will seem at some point like this is a provable, recreatable technology. It's not just spiritual. And so I basically defer to guys like that who have looked into it more than me. I love Michael Heiser, and I think there's a reason why he would put himself out there writing something like that, because he's obviously just a very informed Hebrew scholar.
I'm surprised he took that stance. He seemed like he talked me down from the Bible codes at one point, and he's a very skeptical individual, so that surprises me.
Yeah. At the very top level, spoilers for the book. It's not a very it's terrible as fiction. I'm sorry, Michael Heiser. It's a crappy book as a fiction novel. As a very thinly disguised commentary on conspiracy theories and what he believes is actually going on, it's fantastic. So if you want to read them for that reason, just ignore the characters and just pick up the context and the subtext of what he's trying to say. I find it very interesting that at the climax of the story, and one of the main characters is a Jesuit priest who actually ends up being above the top secret government level that's manipulating the government, CIA, Pentagon level, that Jesuits being astronomers, being the top astronomers in the world, there's something there with their observations of space and obviously the idea that aliens come from space. It's a very interesting proposal that he's essentially making, that there's an occult Jesuit level of contacting demons, gaining insight, the military using it in order to incorporate it into militarized technology, aliens being essentially, aliens as we traditionally understand them as being little gray men and all that, right, being a red herring and something that can be manufactured. He actually proposes the idea that they could be humans that are so experimented on and manipulated that they look like aliens, and that they could disclose that with certain manufactured phenomena occurring around them to prop up the idea that this is a genuine alien that has psychokinetic powers and all of these things. And, it all goes back to Nazis and their experiments, all that kind of stuff. So he gets into all of it.
That reminds me of the Babylon Working. And if you guys aren't familiar with Jack Parsons, read the book Sex and Rockets, I think is what it's called. He was the definition of a mad scientist, and he worked with Aleister Crowley, and they did a series of satanic ritual sex magic called the Babylon Working. Maybe you don't read the book now that I'm saying it out loud, but they brought into this reality a character they called Pan, I believe Lamb. Lamb,
yep.
Drew him as a green-looking alien. An interesting idea of the Greys. Maybe they are humans, maybe they are some sort of
hybrid or something,
physical body for demons to animate, because they're limited in, they have to possess something. Earth, Jesus put them into pigs too, but they have to possess something to be able to animate in this reality. Other than that, they're just spirit. So I've always thought the idea would be interesting that they're creating something that can interface with a demon, so the demon can actually be in an earth suit. Anyways, whatever, we don't know. It's all speculation, but it's definitely interesting. And I would say this, to me, I don't believe at all that the idea that DNA came from non-information. I can't, you debate people and you talk about abiogenesis and the Miller-Urey experiment and the idea of the primordial soup and the lightning hitting it, whatever. That's just bullshit. It doesn't work. The information... DNA is 3 and 4 dimensional, probably. It folds up. It's in different times. It's totally dynamic. It's so complicated. It's an instruction set that had to come before any life. Darwin had no idea that the what he couldn't see with this, indiscrete protoplasm that he called the cell was this unbelievably detailed computer, science driven memory system. So that doesn't happen by chance, in my opinion. And even if you had DNA, to go from DNA to stereoscopic, bipedal, multisensory, compatible, anatomy systems of irreducible complexity and symbiosis, it just doesn't happen. It's not going to happen anywhere else in the universe, I don't think. So I don't care how many stars there are. You'd have to have the right perfect planet, the Goldilocks position. Life would have to show up. Life would have to evolve. Aliens coming to by some natural selection just isn't going to happen. So if there are aliens, I think demons makes more sense to me, something interdimensional.
I feel like one one more thing I have to say about that is that there's another side to aliens that I parodied in a recent video, which is a belief that they are spiritual beings who are visiting from other dimensions, and that they're trying to guide us towards our collective evolution to the next phase. I write about that in my book, Fire in the Rabbit Hole. It's one of these things that's catching on with the New Agers. The idea that they are actually enlightened masters, that they can guide us, is catching on. I don't know how it ties into UFOs per se.
Fully, they're alien life. They're the Palladians. They're the whatever, the reptiles.
Yeah.
Like used to talk about this. It's all it's spirit guides. It's
Alex Jones validates all this stuff too. It's kind of crazy that he had David Icke and Stephen Greer on his show.
I never liked Stephen Greer. I like what Icke. I like the information that Icke presents, but I hate his philosophy. It's very anti-God. The whole What's funny about the reptilians thing is how interesting that the bad guys are serpents. Where have we heard that before? It's like I want to shake Icke, like, bro, wake up. They're demons. Like, if they're showing up as, like, controlling whatever. They didn't evolve over there. This isn't Star Wars. You don't have the blue guys and the purple guys and the Cubert-looking guys, and, like, they're all on different planets. That's not how it works. They're reptiles of their father, the devil. If they are showing up in some sort of incarnate form, they're demons. But, yeah, the Palladians thing, the star guides, like the pineal gland, I love that you're talking about that, Wolf, because, yeah, it's... Well, like you said earlier, we were talking about it, and then we transitioned away from it. This whole thing, it's like, okay, they're lying to us. I've been saying this on this channel for a year now. It's like, now we know they're lying. What do we do now? And who are there? There's Russell Brand, there's Joe Rogan, and they're like ready to bait you into the next trap. And it's this whole universalist, spirit realms. Like, oh, we knew there was a spirit realm, but it's not God of the Bible because that guy's exclusive and he sucks and we voted him off the island. But, the Palladians, like, it's such a clear agenda. And so, like, it's working, unfortunately. Like, it's why I call this the information war. Like, the devil's... Go ahead.
I highly recommend to everybody listening that they get a book called New World Religion by Gary Kaw. It's written in the 1990s. He explains the influence of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the Jesuit priest in the 1800s who pushed evolution, and he had this theory of the universe not being a materialist evolution, but being a spiritual evolution, that the cosmos has a consciousness and it is trying to evolve into this. A priest who is very involved with this, and he's still... Georgetown University, which is a Jesuit university, just a couple of years ago was celebrating his 60th year anniversary of his death, talking about his relevance today and how he's actually just become more and more relevant. This book, New World Religion by Gary Kaw, is the book that I would wish that I could have written. Just such good citations, exact quotations from the creator of the Theosophic Society, from Chardin, from Carl Jung. Carl Jung is huge into the same idea. People think he's a scientist. He's not. He's an occultist. Jordan Peterson derives from Carl Jung. He gets most of his ideas from there. We have to recognize who these people are, where their ideas come from, and where they're leading to. So,
bro, as a Canadian, I didn't expect you to decry Jordan Peterson, but everybody was really excited about him a few years ago. And so I listened, and, obviously a highly intelligent guy, and he's gone through the trauma and whatnot. And he went on this whole diatribe about evolution and the lobsters and how we evolved the ability to read each other's eyes. And then I was like, really, Jordan? Like, you're like super into evolution. Okay, that's interesting. And you say you trust scripture. And then I watched him in a debate with Sam Harris, who's an atheist, who cornered him and basically got him to reject the resurrection of Jesus. And I'm not trying to, I don't want to heap coals. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but Sam Harris, you have seen that. And
yeah,
I was
it was
like,
terrible.
Yeah, dude, bro, you saw that. Like, I haven't even found the YouTube video ever since, but I was like, wow, that's a big thing to
since then, Jordan Peterson has gone on to do a bunch of interviews with Jonathan Pageau, who I think is also Canadian. And they sit and talk about how the Bible is all allegory. It's all archetypal. It's all part of our... Jordan Peterson is as an evolutionist. talking about how it's, he's basically just copying everything Carl Jung said. And Carl Jung talked about how the collective unconscious, we have certain archetypes in our mind. And then Jordan Peterson, the reason why he gets so emotional and he genuinely loves the Bible because he believes it is the purest distillation of our collective unconscious manifesting fables that tap into deep meanings within ourselves, that the Bible is within us, and that when we understand and study the Bible, and that's what Jonathan Pageau's whole deal is that he teaches, he's an expert on breaking down why the Bible is all allegory. And so they were having this emotional, powerful thing, and people say, I'm finding God through Jordan Peterson. And, okay, now that's called mysticism, by the way. If you believe that the Bible is allegory, you are a mystic, you are an occult, you are denying the Bible, you are denying the truth, you're denying Jesus Christ. You are not a Christian if you believe that Jesus Christ's life was a fable that has powerful symbolic meaning. You have to believe that it is actually true. Of course, it has infinite meaning beyond the literal.
And also, I'll let you continue, but it also does the thing you were talking about where it's this collective conscious thing, but it's not that our consciousness is creating it, it's that it creates our consciousness. So there's this truth in there that yes, of course, it's reflective of what we do on the earth and what man experiences, in as much as we all have our Jonah story, we all have our David story, we all have our Moses story, but that's because it's written in the book. And we are, experiencing that, not because we as humans created the book. So there's always these nuanced truths and lies in there you have to be careful of, because there's some truth to that idea that it's part of the consciousness of man, but it is the source. We aren't the source of it. And whenever you get that theology that we are the source of Scripture, you're totally off the rails. It's not reconcilable.
Yeah, I used to love Jordan Peterson. I listened to his Bible lectures, all of them. I looked forward to them. I thought, this is a guy who's trying to understand the Bible, and he's being very coy about where he stands in terms of the literal interpretation because he doesn't want to be attacked by the media. And I gave him credit that he was just not coming out and really doing what Jesus said, which is testifying publicly for him. Jesus said that anyone who denies him in front of people, he will deny on Judgment Day. And I thought, he's just being coy, but sooner or later he's going to come out and say, no, I'm a full-blown, I believe in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and he's my Lord and Savior. Instead, like you said, when he was cornered, he denied it. I pray for Jordan Peterson. I sincerely, every day, hope that he makes the full commitment and says, you know what, the day I come out as a full Christian and I just embrace it, they're going to destroy my career. I'll never be invited back on the quote unquote dark, what did they call it? The dark intellectual web or whatever, the Sam Harris and
those guys.
And Eric Weinstein and these different guys. He's not going to be welcome there.
Of the
Ben Shapiro.
Apocalypse. That's what I call those guys. Those are the Sam Harris guys. Those guys are the neo-Darwinian, the militant atheists that drive me bonkers. But I wouldn't be surprised. And I love what you're saying. I'm glad you're clarifying. People are upset that you're saying this, but take it to God. We're not trying to judge Jordan Peterson. Wolf and I we've never spoken. It's surprising how many things that we reverberate on. But that moment where I watched Jordan Peterson do that struck me hard. And I've never had anybody else have experience that. I've told people that happened, and they're like, yeah, find the video. And I'm like, I don't have time to do that, whatever. He saw it, he felt it. And there's it goes back to that monopolistic control of the information. Think about this. Jordan Peterson is very highly educated. He was a professor at Toronto University for a long time. When you go through that many levels of indoctrination, the chances that you come out trusting Scripture are small, because you are going to have tenacious faith, like a James Tour level of faith and a Stephen Meyer level of faith, to get through those checkpoints and come out and go, yeah, I still haven't renounced God, because you're going to be given ample opportunities. And if you keep pushing this thing, I'm going to teach intelligent design, they're going to tell you you're not going to have a job in this town, you're not going to be funded, whatever. It's really a hard way to do it. So he goes through all these levels of academia and intellectual indoctrination, in my opinion. He's got this trauma from when he was younger, some alcoholism, physical trauma. You see it in his body. He's like suffering with that or whatever. And now he's in this, this arena of intellectual figureheads, and he will not be able to be in there and say, I'm a young earth creationist, and I believe in scripture word for word, and ever be on one of those shows. So maybe it's a selling his soul, metaphorically. Maybe it's a concession. Like you said, maybe he's secretly ready to do this, and he is just waiting for the opportunity to come out and say, hey, I believe every word of the Bible. But maybe he's just, playing the game so he can get more views or whatever. But pray about it. We're not trying to judge the guy. But I've seen exactly what Wolf has seen, and it's concerned me. And I tuned out on him 2 years ago, and I can't even watch anything he says now. It seems insincere and like a half truth. But anyways,
I mean, on some level, I believe everybody who is unsaved. It's a tragic story. I'm not condemning them. I see it as a tragedy that he got sucked into Carl Jung, New Age mysticism through the disguise, because it is a conspiracy. Education is a conspiracy to brainwash people who want to know the truth into believing lies. He fell for it. He fell for the Carl Jung interpretation of psychology, where we all have the universe within us and all of the archetypes of human history is somewhere in our subconscious, and we're just have to reconcile our shadow self to our full self. You can go look it up. Jordan
Jung
Peterson
was
fell for that.
probably demon possessed. I mean, Jung had I don't want to judge him, but he had a digestive thing, a mental breakdown, whatever.
Oh yeah, he had a messed up childhood too.
Right. So he wasn't and him and Freud, see, you got, here's what you got. I love that you just said that our education system is a conspiracy. People don't realize this, but this is a multi-generational, multi-decadal, multi-century long con, I call it. When Darwin was
Yep.
Hey, I'm here and I'm going to teach this thing, and people were like, this guy's got a great idea. Who were the people saying that? I had a geneticist on here one day, and she's like, well, I think Cambridge funded it. And I'm like, I said, who funded Darwin? Because I'm thinking of some grand conspiracy. And she goes, it was Cambridge. She looked it up. And I'm like, the alum at Cambridge? And she's like, probably. And I'm like, and who are those guys? She's like, probably elite white guys. And I'm like, exactly. And you don't think it benefited the narrative at that point to say white European males are the height of evolution and everybody else is a subclass? You don't think that was a hell of a racket for them to pull off? And why aren't people pissed off about it? Why aren't people pissed off that Darwin was a legitimate racist?
Oh, yeah,
The
big
Age
time.
of Descent. He's talked about how they were subhumans and that we were going to wipe everybody out that wasn't white European. People today that are Christians are being critically looked at or whatever because of something that they would say or believe. And meanwhile, Darwin's the untouchable golden calf of science, and he was a total wrong, incorrect racist. I don't have an appendix because of Charles Darwin, because they taught it was a vestigial organ. Many, many people have had unnecessary organs removed because they were taught about this theory of evolution that philosophically is incorrect and marginalizing God's design, and nobody's holding him accountable. He's above the law. He's above the law. I'm pissed. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, but
my favorite example is Kinsey. I mean, Kinsey's, if you want to talk about evil, true evil incarnate, that's Alfred Kinsey. I don't even want to say the words because I'm afraid that your stream is going to get banned, but the inhuman abuse of children that he did in the name of science, systematically, with funding, under factual recording, making claims about the experiences of infants when they're being abused, and giving them over to prisoners and convicted felons in order to abuse so that he could record things for the name of science. Kinsey went on to be a big celebrity in the scientific community, and no one disowns him. To this day, he is still considered to be the father of the sexual revolution and all this liberation of sexuality that we had, and he's such a progressive, good guy in science. So, I mean, you want to talk about a satanic, truly scum of the earth filth. Look up Alfred Kinsey. I forget what the name was, room 411 or 401 or something. I don't remember what the number was, but there's a certain expose of him and all of the things that he did with funding, and writing books. And yep, he was just a scientist. He's just exploring this, new frontier, this exciting frontier of exploring this, new frontier, this exciting frontier of child psychology. And they can apologize for any of it. Eugenics,
right. I was just going to say
transhumanism.
And eugenics, I know you know this, but Galton was Darwin's cousin. And, eugenics was doing terrible things. In the Jim Crow South, they were doing terrible things. They were sterilizing people against their will for these arbitrary things. And nobody talks about it because they're above, they make the law. They're above the law. There was a guy named Ernest Haeckel. Ernest Haeckel drew we've seen the animated drawings. It's like, I was redundant, of like embryos going into adult right before they're in utero, right before they're born. And that process, I forget what it's called, ontogamy.
Yeah, and that was a hoax, right?
It was all a hoax. And he was proven a hoax. He was put in front of his university board and proven a hoax. And they said, well, why did you do it? And he goes, because we believe in evolution and we're going to indoctrinate children to believe this thing, even if it's not true, whatever, doesn't matter. And they were like, well, you can't do this anymore. And they like took his doctorate or something from him. The information stayed in the textbooks for 100 years.
Yep.
And when I was a kid, I read it, and it was fake. It was proven a forgery like 80 years earlier. They're controlling the information, and what they're doing is like we talked earlier about the simulation and what you believe in. If we're in the Matrix, okay, they don't want 8 billion Neos because they'd be screwed if they're us, right?
Yeah.
So they need us to go to work and think about this material life that actually makes us sick and burdens us with we can't ever pay off the debt that we have, so we sell our lives into this new corporate slavery to pay off the debt that we think that we chose when Bernays actually told us to get the thing that we didn't need. And it turns out that Jesus was right. And that makes you sick and was a bad idea. So like the truth of the book, you trust the book. The other things, if it's not with the book, it's probably, I don't want to generalize too much, but it's probably from the other side. And like whether it's Jordan Peterson, whoever else, like the Bible is trustworthy. And I encourage you guys to lean into it. It's a big thing that I'm trying to do with VOR. You can trust the word. You can trust the science of the word. You can trust the history of the word. My phone might die, and before that happens, and if we hang up, I want to say a couple things. Atav, brother, I love you. Thank you for setting this up. This is amazing. Wolf, I love you. I appreciate you and what you're doing. God bless you and your ministry and what you're doing. Everybody, please subscribe to both of these guys. Please follow them. Wolf's book. Own the book. Get the physical copy. Bless him. Read it. You're going to love it. And, that puts a couple dollars in his bank account, and you own something that Alexa can't take away when she shuts down the Digital Library of Alexandria. So that's a good idea. I would buy that. We can keep talking a little bit just in case my phone died. I wanted to do that. One more thing is, if you're not following me on YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to Wolf's YouTube channel. If you want to join our Discord, we do a Bible study. We've been watching The Chosen on Saturdays, which is cool. Bunch of like-minded Christian conspiracy theorists. I have merch. Oh, I don't know if you can see my shirt, Wolf, but it says The Priests of the Religion of Science.
Oh, nice.
And it's Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, and Richard Dawkins. It's a shirt I made when I first started making merch, but I've got merch as well. And we can keep talking, but I want to get those things out in case my phone died.
Yeah, ATAV has been the number one supporter of mine from the earliest days of my first account. He's been absolutely awesome for going into the comments and telling people things, and we've had private communication since then, and we're good friends. And so, yeah, I want to thank him too.
God bless you, ATAV. I've got supporters, mods, people too. We couldn't do this. Like I mentioned the kingdom work earlier, and I don't want to overstate what I'm doing or what Wolf is doing, but we can't do this without support. Spiritual, by praying for us, financial, being in here, being mods, engaging with us. We appreciate you guys so much. ATAV, God bless you. My group, God bless you guys. Thank you. Seriously, you guys make this happen, so thank you.
I want to thank you guys as well, because you guys have, carried the conversation, which I don't mind. I like listening more than actually speaking my thoughts, unless, it's something I'm actually sharing. But I really want to just wrap it up and basically, put it in the sense is, answering the question, do we have free will? You see it as two sides of a coin. I say that God is fully sovereign and that he has control over the destiny of everybody. And whether it's his prerogative to allow agency, that's his decision. And I believe he does allow agency, which is where we get the illusion of choice and, desire and such things like that. So that's my final stance. I did see a question in the comments earlier that was along the lines of like, what do we think about music and its effect in the future generations? I feel like that's a question that we should probably come back to sometime if we're ever able to come back together and do this again. We should talk about, because I feel like music actually, I think I actually told you this last week when I said music is a language, and it's a part of this simulation or this type of reality that we exist in. And that is a topic I would like to discuss in detail. Like, how does music and the Bible coincide, and how does God use music and such things like that? So
I'd love to talk about that. We talked when you were on ATAV about the information-based reality, Q&A specific. I want to say that I really appreciated your take on the free will thing. And how can I argue with God as omnipotence and total control and chooses to give us free agency when he does? Makes sense to me. I like the free will with training wheels idea. But it's complicated, and I think it's quantum physics in nature. But I would say that just like what Wolf was saying, you have free will. I believe that. Like until you go, I'm going to go try and do this thing, and you get stopped by wind or something like that. Like you have free will at least up to a certain level. I don't know particularly. It's complicated, but I do know that God is just, and I hope that we will be able to make sense of it in eternity. I pray that we all get to spend eternity with the Father, asking him these questions, having him reveal these mysteries to us. That would be amazing. But either way, I've loved the discussion. Wolf, do you have a closing statement?
Yeah, my closing thought is to reiterate my point, because I'm sure there's a bunch of people who joined who didn't hear it before, is that we need to act as if we have free will. We need, whether or not truly on some metaphysical level there is some strings being pulled in the depths of our hearts or our spirit itself, whatever, that is guiding our thoughts and guiding us to some conclusions and ends. Okay, that's probably also happening. In fact, I am pretty sure it is. But we need to act as if we have full accountability, that we are going to be accountable for everything we say, everything we do, that our actions matter, our ability to impact other people matter. Everything matters. Whether or not there is, however, degrees of free will, everything matters deeply. You will stand before the white judgment throne, and you will have to account for what you said and what you did. And if your excuse is predestination, or your other excuse is Calvinism, or whatever your buzzword is that you don't like, that you're gonna use as an excuse to not get involved and obey what God is telling you to do, that's not going to cut it. I look at it this way. I'm moving towards a goal that I don't know what it is, but I'm going to go there in a way that I believe God is in conformity to what God has told me to do. And I'm going to try to get there as strongly as I can. I'm going to try to reach out and take the promises that God gave me. Those are promises that I need to participate in. And if he allows me to, I'm going to reap the benefits. And so it's fatalism in a weird way, while having an extreme sense of responsibility. And you might see that as a contradiction or a paradox, but I believe that I have a fate. I don't know what it is, but I am going to act as if and have faith in the idea that it is good for me, that God has planned things out for me, that if I reach out and take it, I can receive the promises that he has given. And so far in my life, it has proven to be true. And I have the testimony of people like yourself. We get spared miraculously, these kinds of things. This only confirms my faith that we're here for a very powerful reason, and we need to act as if we have the free will to take advantage of that.
Amen. I had an idea. This is super controversial. Whatever. You told me to be bold, Wolf, so this is your fault if it goes off the rails. No, so you were talking about, like, you basically, I think you said that partially, like, you don't understand the mystery of free will because it's complicated. And I had this idea today that in this reality, this is going to be bad, in this reality right now, there's a very concerted effort to think non-binary, right? In particular, as it relates to gender. You hear this all the time. Not binary, no binary, no binary. I have this idea. So we live in this upside down world, right? Where like the truth is being told as a lie and the lie is being told as truth, good as evil, so on and so forth. What if the only thing in this reality that's actually binary is gender? The only thing, and everything else is a spectrum and like complicated. Like, it's a weird thing to think about. I know, I'm sorry, but like you're talking about free will. We want to say, is it free will? Is it not? What if it's not binary? What if it's both somehow? Schrodinger's cat.
Some people might have more than others. There's all sorts of assumptions built in when you start talking about it, and I hear arguments about what is your simple one-word answer to free will, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's not only is it complicated, but it's complicated in a way that I would love to spend time giving meaningful thought to. To me, being complicated is not an excuse to not think it through. I mean, it's not essential to theology either. Jesus didn't tell us to care about that per se. I mean, he gives us warnings. He says, I put a choice before you. You have to choose. Are you going to listen or are you not? Over and over, the emphasis is on choice. And yet, at the same time, for those who have ears to hear it, it sounds like those choices are only those who God gives me are going to actually listen. It's a paradox. And I saw a TikTok creator once say that these aren't contradictions in the Bible. These are paradoxes. And that's a difference where it's a paradox because his understanding is so much greater than ours that we can't comprehend it or reconcile these things. But that's one of the beauties of living in this giant mysterious reality that we have, where we have evidence. I've seen things from people, they pray for something and suddenly events just start falling into place and they get exactly what they want. And it's like, that's not rational. There's no probability wise that's impossible.
Right.
I've prayed for things and it goes the opposite way and it turns out to be a disaster. And then it still ends up benefiting me. And I didn't get what I prayed for. Instead, I got the thing that I needed. And so we live in a reality that if we're being objective and we're incorporating the lessons of miracles and prayer and all these things, and not limiting ourselves to putting on the blinders of materialism and stuff, you see that there is a spiritual realm that is having an influence beyond what we can see and understand. And if you embrace that, as opposed to just being conceding it and saying, well, yeah, I believe in it. No, embrace it as a truth and say, I'm in good hands. God is taking care of me. He's taking care of me this far. He's going to take care of me till the bitter end, whatever it is. And then he'll raise me up on the day of resurrection. It's an empowering reality in that sense, and not that we're empowered and that we're selfishly empowered, but we get to enjoy the power of God and his angels who are looking over us. And in that sense, free will is just this one part of this dynamic the spirit within us, the Holy Spirit that he gives us, that's his spirit. It's not our spirit. So it's having an influence beyond what we understand. The whole topic of free will opens up the door, in my mind, to the reality of the spiritual realm and how we're just doing a little bit of participation in there, while we're given warnings, while we're given choices that have very significant meaning. So I really hate a reductionist view of it either way. And I'm glad that you don't have a reductionist view of it. It's like, you recognize that there's things beyond our comprehension and understanding. And like we said about the analogy of, a child who has free will but doesn't understand enough to make intelligent choices. And, God calls us children. Someday we'll have better understanding. And Paul says that we will know even as we are known. But right now we live in the mystery.
So I don't know if my phone is going to make it through this with this iPhone. I either plug in my headphones or my charger and it's about to die. But what you just said about not being reductionist and that it's dynamic, I think is really important. If you research, we talked about the double slit experiment earlier, I think with my prior guest, but if you've researched the Wigner thought experiment, it's kind of like the Schrodinger's cat on like steroids. And basically, what happened is Wigner postulated that one particle could be in a state of superposition, while an observer goes and collapses it by interacting with it, and it determines its state. But that another observer has not yet determined the state of the same particle, and so it remains in a state of superposition. He said, how crazy would it be if the same particle is in an undetermined state and a fixed state, depending on if the person had viewed it or not. So the one person views it, sure enough, it lines up, chooses its orientation, but for the other person, it's still in a state of superposition, which means that the same particle can be in two different states at the same time for two different users. If they've proven it. I can't vet that they did or not, but if that's true, the Earth could be flat and a globe. It could be free will and not. I don't want to be like nihilistic here and be like nothing matters, but it is dynamic, and this is why I encourage believers to say, I believe this. I believe it very strongly. I'm very convicted. And if you don't have the ability to be an apologist, if you haven't done your research or whatever, then you tell people, hey, I love God. And they say, why? Because I felt him in my heart. I can't explain it, but I believe in God. That's a good way too. What we don't want to do, and this is one thing Wolf was talking about earlier, people come into our videos and say, they tell me I'm stupid. I haven't done my research. I'm stupid for being a conspiracy theorist. I'm stupid for denying the, thinking that Easter is a pagan thing. They just run around and do it. Like, don't expose yourself as ignorant and speak where you can't speak. Say, I believe this where you're not sure. And, I think it's important to me to understand we're in this beautiful, dynamic, created, information-based reality, and the author is the author of Scripture. And whatever it ends up being, we can trust that it's good because he is just and he is in charge. And I praise him for being in charge. And I praise him for life. And I praise him for what level of free will we have. And I thank him for you guys. I thank him for everybody that was in this chat tonight. I ask that God blesses you. And I think
God bless you, Luke.
God bless you. I appreciate it, Wolf. And Atav, you too, guys. We'll do it again some other time, maybe?
I would hope so.
Yeah. Hopefully, yeah.
All right,
Pretty
guys.
sure, WOLFPOX, you're off next Saturday, right?
I should be off at this
I mean
Sunday,
right?
Sunday evening. I should be available as well.
Okay.
Yeah, let's
Maybe
message.
next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
That'd be
amazing.
awesome. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Amazing talking to you guys.
If God is willing.
Exactly.
If God wills it, yes, if God wills it.
My free will says we're going to come back. So
We'll see. What if my free will says we're not? Let's see what happens. Love you guys.
Amazing. All right.
And
thank you very much.